Hey guys, tonight we're popping open a can of something genuinely historic and a bit bubbly. We're travelling back to an era when America's beloved soda wasn't merely sweet, it was pharmaceutical, that's correct. Tonight's tale starts in the early 20th century when practically every kid in America was essentially on lithium courtesy of 7-Up. Yeah, the identical 7-Up you currently connect with hangovers, airplane beverages and your grandma's jello dessert once arrived spiked with a mood-regulating compound potent enough to get Freud's attention. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely appreciate what I create here. Drop a comment sharing where you're watching from, and whether you've ever unintentionally self-treated with caffeine, nostalgia, or 3 back-to-back sodas before bedtime. Now lower those lights, perhaps switch on a fan for that gentle background noise. Get settled. Maybe grab a beverage, ideally one not featuring lithium carbonate. Because tonight we're exploring a tale so bubbly, so ridiculous, and so purely American, you can practically sense the corporate recklessness. Let's get inquisitive for a moment. Have you ever questioned why your grandparents referred to soda as tonic? Or how soft beverages used to guarantee both everlasting joy and sturdy bones? Did folks genuinely think a fizzy drink could treat depression? And what occurs when the beverage sector decides to act like pharmacists? Most crucially, how did we transition from lithium-infused lemon-lime remedies to diet sodas that can eat through a nail? Congratulations, you've just awakened in 1929. The Great Depression is approaching, everyone's worried, and somebody somewhere is packaging a sparkling drink that declares, "Don't fret, we've got your psychological wellness handled in a 12-ounce container." It's the late 1800s and America is obsessed with science, or at minimum the interpretation of it that features fizzy water and unproven chemistry. Drugstores are the Silicon Valley of the period, and every pharmacist is concocting miracle remedies that claim to heal everything from stomach upset to emotional pain. You enter for a migraine and exit with something that would subsequently be designated as Schedule 1. You can envision it now. A refined oak bar gleaming underneath the gentle radiance of gas fixtures. Racks filled with glass containers in every tone of amber and emerald. Behind the bar stands a gentleman with a remarkable moustache and 0 medical credentials, blending mixtures with titles like Dr. Blissbrain Revitalizer and Professor Smith's Electric Potion. The atmosphere smells vaguely of sugar, vanilla, menthol, and misguided. Assurance. It's the emergence of the soda fountain and the start of a romance between America, carbonation and fake science. Let's be honest, soda didn't begin as a snack, it began as a remedy. Carbonated water was the 19th century solution to health culture, the Gwyneth Paltrow goop of its era, but with additional mercury. Physicians thought that bubbles possessed curative properties. Effervescence, they claimed, activates digestion, elevates the mood, and re-establishes equilibrium to the humours, which is an elaborate method of expressing it tingles your tongue, so it must be working. And it wasn't merely water. Oh, absolutely not. Into that fizzy foundation went everything mankind should likely never have consumed. Coca foliage for energy, morphine for discomfort, arsenic for the skin tone. If it made you feel strange, it was therapeutic. Even your neighbourhood pharmacist transformed into part scientist, part mixologist, part counsellor, hearing your troubles, acknowledging sympathetically, and then presenting a glass of something faintly luminous your direction. Consume this, he'd suggest. It's scientifically validated to make you stop worrying. Soda fountains evolved into community centres. Individuals assembled there for dialogue, rumours and regulated substance dispersal. It was the original Starbucks, except rather than caffeine and oat milk, you were receiving carbonated narcotics garnished with a cherry. The sound of glass on marble, the whisper of soda water, the delicate fizz. It was America's initial experience of progress, and the lesson was science could repair anything, even your existential anxiety. The advantage of this period was its complete absence of regulation. No FDA, no ingredient laws, no bothersome clinical studies. You could package optimism, label it medicine, and market it to anyone with a nickel and a heartbeat. The more extravagant the assertion, the superior the profits. Exhausted, melancholy, nervous. Sample this sparkling lithium mixture. Individuals didn't simply purchase it, they endorsed it. In a time when physicians recommended leeches and alcohol, a lemon-scented mood enhancer appeared absolutely reasonable. Naturally, it wasn't all deception, at least not deliberately. Numerous of these soda creators were genuine enthusiasts in chemistry. They'd studied about new breakthroughs in Europe where researchers were testing with carbonation remedies and mineral liquids. The concept was that you could harness the restorative power of nature, or at minimum the bubbly aspect of it, and container it for ease. It was advancement, driven by equal measures curiosity and caffeine, and that's how the planet got its initial generation of pharmaceutical drinks. Some brands you'd identify today, Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, Pepsi, all originated as medicinal wonders. Coca-Cola was designed to address fatigue and morphine dependency, which is paradoxical since it featured both caffeine and cocaine. Dr. Pepper asserted to assist digestion. Pepsi guaranteed to remedy dyspepsia or persistent heartburn, and each one originated from the identical location, the storage area of a drugstore where science encountered experimentation and occasionally detonated. By the beginning of the century, soda had transformed into a representation of advancement. Consuming a carbonated drink meant you were contemporary, informed, and potentially hallucinating. Advertisements displayed elegantly dressed gentlemen and ladies drinking from frosted glasses, grinning like they'd just uncovered enlightenment through lemon concentrate. Youngsters were urged to consume it for wellness and vigour, and why shouldn't they? It was medication, sugary, sparkling medication that didn't taste like misery. Obviously, the genuine mystery wasn't the medication, it was the sugar, humanity's most ancient adaptation strategy. Now, carbonated sugar rendered everything enjoyable. The sharpness of quinine, the sting of alcohol, the powdery flavour of pulverised lithium carbonate. The sugariness made it seem harmless, even when it wasn't. Because that's the significant paradox of early soda. It was simultaneously the toxin and the remedy, the difficulty and the placebo. So there you sit, positioned at a marble bar in 1895, consuming your bubbly brain remedy while the soda jerk cleans glasses with a cloth that's experienced better centuries. You feel content, superior than content. The space appears brighter, the concerns about payment, the cough that won't disappear, the perception that the world is accelerating too rapidly, all of it vanishes in the fizz. You grin. Perhaps the bubbles genuinely are functioning, and somewhere in the rear of the establishment a gentleman is scribbling on a chalkboard, currently testing with lemon seasoning and lithium compounds. Because this is where it all starts, not with a soft beverage, but with a notion that science could be delicious, medication could sparkle, and contentment might simply arrive packaged, cooled, and gently carbonated. And for a period, it did. In the bustling avenues of early 20th century St. Louis, Missouri, you'd discover a gentleman hunched over glass containers and syrupy mixtures, sleeves pushed up, eyes somewhat too intense for reassurance. His identity was Charles Leiper Grigg, and he wasn't merely producing soda, he was producing emotions. Particularly, he was packaging joy, one bubbling lemon-lime trial at a time. Charles wasn't a scientist by education, he was a salesperson. The variety of gentleman who could persuade you that precipitation was simply unbottled refreshment. Delivered in 1868, he matured during the golden period of remedy medicine, when every alternative guy with a moustache believed he could cure the human predicament with carbonation and enthusiasm. He commenced working in promotion, marketing everything from detergent to preserved food before discovering the realm of soft beverages, where sugar, science and presentation converged in one glass. Grigg initiated his profession with a corporation called Whistle, where he assisted market an orange soda that became remarkably successful. But like any capable inventor in history, he was equal measures dreamer and determined. He possessed concepts of his own, new tastes, new recipes, and most significantly, a beverage that could surpass Coca-Cola. Regrettably, Whistle's administration didn't value his determination. Workplace tensions erupted, personalities conflicted, and Charles was dismissed. But he didn't surrender. No, he executed what any self-regarding soda experimenter would execute. He commenced brewing his retaliation in a cellar. And what a cellar it was! Imagine dim illumination, glass vessels filled with enigmatic fluids, and Charles blending syrups like a sorcerer mid-crisis. The surfaces probably smelled like citrus and shattered aspirations. He labelled his initial independent trial Howdy, a cheerful orange-flavoured soda that performed moderately successfully but lacked the flash of brilliance. What he required was something distinct, something that wasn't already filling the racks. Orange was occupied, cola was oversaturated, grape was a cemetery of unsuccessful products. So he pursued lemon-lime, a taste nobody had quite mastered yet. And here's where the enchantment occurred. Grigg wasn't merely contemplating about taste. He was contemplating about purpose. Everyone in the 1920s was anxious, the economy was unstable, modern existence was intensifying, and individuals were realising that labouring 14-hour shifts wasn't as appealing as it sounded in the advertisement. What if, Grigg pondered, there was a beverage that didn't merely taste pleasant but made you feel pleasant? He'd learned about lithium compounds, a substance commended by scientists for its alleged capacity to stabilise mood and calm the nerves. In actuality, it was a powerful psychiatric compound, but to Charles it sounded like the mystery component to packaged happiness, so he incorporated it, simply a touch lithium carbonate, not sufficient to overwhelm you, but sufficient to make your neurons feel like they'd recently experienced a holiday. The outcome was refreshing, tart and mysteriously uplifting. It didn't merely revive you, it made you cheerful. When he ultimately packaged his invention in 1929, he labelled it something that flowed right off the tongue bib label, lithiated lemon-lime soda. You understand the variety of title that proclaims marketing brilliance. The label appeared like something from a laboratory inventory catalogue. Solemn, clinical, medicinal. And yet individuals adored it. It seemed contemporary, scientific, dependable. Consuming it made you component of the future. Certainly it was a future infused with mood regulators, but that was a trivial aspect. The scheduling couldn't have been more peculiar. Grigg's soda debuted just weeks before the stock market collapse of 1929. While the economy was crumbling, his beverage was fizzing. Individuals lost their resources, but they still possessed 5 cents for a soda that guaranteed to make everything acceptable chemically or otherwise. In a period when the national activity was hopelessness, Charles Grigg was marketing packaged hopefulness. His facility, the Howdy Corporation, became a symbol of unusual optimism. Labourers blended syrup and carbonation by hand, while containers of bottles emerged from the facility like glass antidepressants on wheels. The product gained traction in drugstores initially, that flawless combination of scientific and sugary. By 1932, the beverage was quietly expanding across the Midwest. Individuals weren't certain why it made them feel so pleasant, but they didn't raise questions. In the early 20th century, if something functioned, you didn't analyse it, you simply purchased another container. Grigg, perpetually the advertiser, emphasised the wellness perspective. Advertisements asserted his soda-assisted digestion, calmed upset stomachs, and even stimulated the mind. He wasn't technically deceiving. Lithium will accomplish that. Consumers endorsed it. Parents administered it to children. Physicians suggested it to patients, and Charles simply grinned, likely wondering how he'd accomplished the most significant accidental psychopharmacological trial in American history. Subsequently, he recognised the title bib label lithiated lemon lime soda wasn't precisely memorable. You couldn't request it without sounding like a defective typewriter. So he redesigned the new title 7 Up. Brief, contemporary, enigmatic. Some suggested it referenced the drink's 7 components. Others believed it mentioned lithium's atomic weight. Grigg never clarified, likely because he appreciated watching the world speculate. By the occasion he passed in 1940, his lemon-lime brain remedy had already established its position in American society. The lithium remained in the recipe until 1948, when the FDA ultimately observed that half the nation's youngsters were technically medicated. But by then, 7-Up was unstoppable. So next occasion you pop open a can and detect that cheerful fizz, remember Charles Leiper Grigg, the gentleman who converted chemistry into comfort, science into soda, and America's shared anxiety into a marketable taste. Because before 7-Up was a soft beverage, it was a condition of mind, and that mind was exceptionally peaceful. You've likely executed some dubious things in your existence, consumed dubious sushi, dated dubious individuals, maybe even taken supplements without verifying what they were. But in the 1930s, Americans elevated dubious to a whole new effervescent dimension because the mystery component in their preferred soft beverage, the one they administered to youngsters, consumed at lunch bars and promoted as wholesome, was lithium carbonate, correct. The identical chemical utilized today to address bipolar condition and severe depression was once informally dissolved into lemon-lime soda. Lithium was identified in the early 19th century by a Swedish scientist who believed it might remedy gout. It didn't, but that didn't prevent the medical establishment from incorporating it into everything from mineral liquids to lozenges. By the occasion Charles Leiper Grigg encountered it, lithium was already enjoying a standing as a nerve remedy. The reasoning went something like individuals who were depressed were imbalanced, and lithium, a genuine metal, would stabilize them. Science, naturally. This was the late 1920s. The standard for scientific precision was somewhere between impressions and guesses. If something made you feel superior, it was medication. If it sparkled, even superior. So when Grigg invented his lithiated lemon-lime soda, nobody questioned an eye. In reality, it sounded absolutely sensible. Why merely have sugar and bubbles when you could have sugar bubbles and emotional equilibrium? The reasoning was straightforward, or rather oversimplified. Lithium carbonate was recognized to settle people down, decrease irritability, and regulate mood fluctuations. The adverse effects, shaking, dehydration, and potential kidney complications were mostly disregarded because, well, individuals didn't examine the fine details. And since the typical soda consumer wasn't precisely overdosing, each bottle featured about 5 milligrams of lithium. Nobody collapsed dead. Instead, they simply felt pleasant, like a breath in liquid shape. Imagine taking a drink. The lemon-lime sharpness strikes your tongue, the bubbles perform in your mouth, and within moments you feel relaxed. Not intoxicated, not sleepy, just pleasantly detached. The stock market's collapsed. Acceptable. Your supervisor is shouting. Whatever. The neighbour's cow consumed your laundry again. Typical cow. Life still disappoints, but it somehow seems controllable. That was the wonder of lithium. It didn't resolve your difficulties. It simply made them appear like someone else's. Individuals cherished it. They didn't understand why, but they did. The soda was invigorating, crisp and unknowingly, softly, mood-regulating. It was like the world's initial antidepressant masked as a soft beverage. Mothers insisted it maintained their kids peaceful. Gentlemen asserted it remedied nerves. Ladies suggested it elevated the moods. The only ones who didn't cherish it were pharmacists who were suddenly losing revenue to a beverage section. And Grigg, he didn't precisely conceal it. The term lithiated was right there on the label, he informed everyone. But here's the situation. Individuals didn't comprehend what lithiated signified. It sounded technical, scientific, dependable. In a period when advertisements asserted cigarettes were beneficial for digestion and radium made your teeth brighter, lithium soda appeared almost wholesome. Lithium even possessed history on its aspect. By the 1930s, natural lithia liquids mineral springs abundant in lithium compounds had become fashionable vacation destinations. Individuals travelled to them for their restorative qualities. Bathing in lithium water was claimed to alleviate stress and re-establish vitality. Consuming it was thought to purify the mind. So when 7-Up arrived promising the identical advantages in a packaged lemony shape, it wasn't strange. It was brilliant. Physicians didn't protest either. In reality, many supported it. Some even recommended it a soda that enhanced mood, assisted digestion, and satisfied thirst. Flawless. Nobody concerned about extended-term consequences because, well, the world was still understanding penicillin. The Great Depression had individuals anxious and despairing. And here was a 5-cent wonder that guaranteed instant peace. It was science encounters, capitalism encounters, existential emergency, and America consumed it down. There was, however, one minor difficulty. Lithium doesn't simply make you peaceful, it can also make you excessively peaceful. Like staring at a surface for 3 hours and forgetting your identity peaceful. A few researchers quietly expressed worries, but their cautions fizzled in the presence of booming revenues. Individuals didn't desire reality, they desired relief. And lithium-infused 7-Up provided it with a twist of lime. For almost 2 generations, nobody challenged it. The corporation promoted it proudly, takes the pain out of grumpiness. One advertisement proclaimed it was simultaneously absurd and precise. Youngsters consumed it, expectant ladies consumed it. One infant advertisement even displayed a grinning baby drinking from a straw captioned "Begin your child correctly," which in retrospect sounds more like a warning than guidance. But in 1948, science ultimately caught up with excitement. The FDA quietly intervened, proposing that perhaps, just perhaps, mass administering the population with mood regulators was not a viable business strategy. Lithium was eliminated from the recipe. No announcement, no controversy. Simply gone. Immediately. The nation's shared serenity declined a few degrees and nobody understood why. For 2 generations, America had been self-treating without recognizing it. They'd packaged peace, labelled it refreshment, and constructed an empire on the happiness of ignorance. And maybe, just maybe, that's why 7-Up still labels itself the Young Cola. Because deep down, it's not about caffeine or cola conflicts. It's about that faint, fizzy recollection of a simpler era when contentment arrived from a glass container, and the mystery component was the one element everyone declined to challenge. When you picture the Great Depression, you likely envision breadlines, soup facilities, and gentlemen in hats sadly marketing apples on a street corner. But let's establish the atmosphere a little more accurately. It's 1931. Your neighbour is performing a melancholy melody on a damaged radio. Your shoes possess more repairs than leather, and there, shining like a symbol of optimism behind the bar at your local drugstore, is a glass container of 7-Up, the original Persevere in liquid shape. You reach into your pocket and sense the rough edges of a nickel. 5 cents. In this period, is not simply a coin. It's a pass to feeling almost acceptable for 12 ounces. While the stock market is collapsing and the bank has courteously foreclosed on your hopefulness, you still possess access to one element Wall Street can't confiscate: artificially carbonated tranquility of mind. Soda in the early 1930s wasn't a snack. It was a temporary escape, a mini vacation that occurred on a rotating stool at the pharmacy, under the gentle hum of neon fixtures and the constant sound of glass. For 5 cents, you could neglect, at minimum for the duration of an extended, slow drink, that everything else in your existence was collapsing. The soda jerk would open a container, and the fizz would ascend like optimism itself. You tilt the glass, sense that cool lemon lime strike your tongue, and for a moment, simply a moment, you weren't experiencing through history's rough manuscript. You were experiencing the American aspiration. Why did 7-Up flourish while the economy collapsed? Scheduling, for one. Charles Grigg's lithiated lemon-lime soda entered the market just before the collapse. While fortunes were disappearing, his little green containers multiplied. Soda was cheaper than a counsellor, simpler to consume than hopelessness, and socially permitted to consume for breakfast. And thanks to the wonder of lithium carbonate, it accomplished what the government couldn't. It actually settled people down. It wasn't simply adults queuing up for their daily amount of manufactured optimism. Youngsters got involved in the action too. Children who once would have been dispatched outside to expend energy now sat quietly, consuming their way through the family's shared neuroses. There are tales of entire households assembling around the radio, each grasping a sweating glass of 7-Up, hearing to FDR's fireside conversations with an air of dubious serenity. Roosevelt may have guaranteed a new arrangement, but 7-Up provided a new mood. Let's discuss marketing. During the Depression, corporations couldn't simply market a product. They had to market an experience. 7-Up's promotions were masterpieces of gentle implication. Feel correct, consume 7-Up, and a fresh beginning in every glass. Some advertisements went further, offering the guarantee of not simply good digestion, but a cheerful temperament. Attempt finding that on a can of modern diet soda. And it succeeded? Soda fountains became refugees. No matter how unfortunate the information, you could always purchase a little piece for the price of a postage stamp. In an age of shortage, 7-Up was plenty a dependable comfort in a world where everything else seemed unpredictable. Even the action of sitting down with a soda became a ceremony of hopefulness, a tiny defiance against hopelessness. It didn't resolve your difficulties, but it made them seem less severe. Obviously, there's paradox here. The nation's significant liquid comfort was genuinely a psychoactive compound, and nobody minded. Or maybe nobody desired to mind. Individuals were exhausted. The guarantee of a chemically produced cheerful temperament was precisely what America required. In the land of the liberated, the pursuit of contentment sometimes arrived with a portion of lithium. And the experience was all in the aspects. The sensation of the glass container cold and sweating in your palm, the sharp crack of the cap, the tingle of carbonation, the gentle hum of dialogue in the background, interrupted by the occasional laughter of someone who, for a few blessed moments, neglected about unemployment statistics and remembered what optimism tasted like. So here's the conclusion. While America was in the grip of its harshest reality verification, the nation's best marketing mood enhancer arrived not from a drugstore prescription or a psychologist's office, but from a soda fountain. 5 cents for an opportunity to feel superior. No questions requested. And maybe that's the genuine mystery of the Great Depression. Remedy that. In a time of shared anxiety, the most significant luxury wasn't gold or property or even job stability. It was 12 ounces of carbonated bravery, quietly fizzing with the guarantee that tomorrow might be a little bit more pleasant. Step into a 1930s American drugstore, and you're not simply entering a pharmacy. You're walking into a temple of optimism. Marble bars gleaming under milky fixtures, brass hardware polished until you can observe your reflection, which fortunately appears less concerned in the flattering dim light. The atmosphere is heavy with the aroma of menthol and liniment blended with the sugary tang of syrupy soda. Here, the pharmacist isn't simply a distributor of pills. He's an experimenter, a counsellor, and, for the price of a nickel, a distributor in hopefulness. It's the golden period of the soda fountain, and the drugstore is the Silicon Valley of aspirations. White-jacketed soda jerks stand at readiness behind the bar, prepared to create whatever you require. a root beer for a painful throat, a phosphate for heartburn, and if your nerves are misbehaving, a tall glass of 7-Up. The marble bar is filled with individuals, students in woolen sweaters, mothers with restless toddlers, elderly gentlemen examining the paper and pretending not to observe the world collapsing outside. There's no Spotify playlist here, but the sound of glasses and the whisper of carbonated water supply all the atmosphere you'll ever require. What's remarkable is that the boundary between medication and snack doesn't exist. Yet. You don't consume your soda at a plastic table. You sit at the bar conversing with the pharmacist about your ailments, your day, and the latest town rumours. He'll hear, kindly stroke his moustache, then recommend invigorating remedy that doubles as dessert and potentially a mild psychiatric treatment. Here, beverages don't simply taste pleasant. They guarantee to heal, re-establish, and in the case of 7-Up, softly dial down the existential panic of the period. The labels on the containers reinforce the atmosphere. Lithiated lemon-lime soda they display in fonts that appear suspiciously like something you'd observe on an old pharmacy jar. Everything about 7-Up's design proclaims scientific advancement, and trust me, I'm a physician. Which is amusing since most soda jerks had only graduated from high school and the FDA was still learning how to spell regulation. For the typical American, though, the drugstore was where advancement existed. If it was marketed next to cough syrup, it had to be beneficial for you. And let's be truthful, this was a period where you could acquire a little something additional in almost every glass. Coca-Cola still possessed a residue of cocaine. Dr. Pepper featured pepsin, a digestive enzyme from pigs. Drugstore soda fountains were the original functional drink dispensaries, long before wellness influencers uncovered adaptogens. 7-Up simply took things a step further. Why not combine mood stability into your mid-afternoon? Selection me up. The ceremony itself was half the medication. After a difficult morning at labour or an extended walk through dust-filled streets, you'd settle on a squeaky bar stool and request a beverage with the assurance of someone investing in their future. The soda jerk would grab a chilled container, open the cap with a practised crack, and pour it into a tall glass, ice ringing softly. The initial drink was sharp, citrusy, and almost medicinal. But the genuine enchantment arrived a few moments later when you realised you actually felt superior. Was it the sugar, the carbonation, the lithium? You'd never understand, but you'd continue coming back for more. If you were feeling particularly exhausted, you could request a prescription blend, combining 7-Up with other remedies for a customised remedy. Migraine. Attempt it with a dash of bitters. Difficulty sleeping? Add a splash of cherry phosphate. There was something for everyone and no shortage of medical confidence. You'd observe mothers administer their youngsters a glass, asserting it assisted with digestion. Teenagers insisted it provided them energy for baseball practice. Elderly timers maintained it was the only element that settled their stomach. After Aunt Mabel's meatloaf, the drugstore was a location where nobody criticised, and everyone pretended science had it all understood. You could arrive for cough drops and depart with a grin, a container of 7-Up, and maybe, just maybe, the vague sensation that everything was going to be acceptable. The drugstore aesthetic wasn't simply about white tiles and glass vessels. It was about trust, ceremony, and the reassuring illusion that the remedy was always just a drink away. So the next occasion you observe an old soda fountain in a museum. Picture yourself there, elbows on the marble surface, heart a little lighter, consuming from a cold glass and believing, if only for a moment, that you're consuming the future. Because for a period you genuinely were. If you desire to understand what pure, unfiltered hopefulness appears like, you don't require a time machine. Just open a 1930s 7-Up promotion. Here, in a riot of cheerful fonts and questionable medical assertions, you'll discover an America that thinks contentment can be packaged, marketed for a nickel, and served with a straw. The marketing teams behind early 7-Up weren't simply marketing a beverage. They were marketing serenity, happiness, and the notion that you could repair your nerves the identical way you repaired a craving for something sugary with a cold glass of lemon, lime, and a gentle portion of lithium carbonate. Let's establish one element straight. 7-Up's marketing division was ahead of its era. Today's brands would sacrifice their Twitter accounts to be this shamelessly successful. While most of America was concerned about where the next meal was originating from, 7-Up's advertisements were guaranteeing a cheerful temperament in every glass. And take the pain out of grumpiness. If modern pharmaceutical commercials arrived with talking lemons and no list of adverse effects, this is precisely what they would appear like. Picture flipping through a magazine in 1935 between advertisements for corsets, moustache wax, and Ford's newest model. You'd discover a grinning baby clutching a glass of 7-Up. Picture this, marketed as so innocent, so pure, you could serve it to infants, actual infants. If you're questioning whether parents truly needed assistance calming their children, remember the iPad didn't exist yet. A splash of lithium-laced lemon lime became a shortcut to domestic peace. The nation was on edge, and 7-Up marketed itself as the original gentle parenting solution, complete with citrus notes and mild sedation on the side. But infants weren't the only targets. The intended market was anyone breathing and struggling. Exhausted workers got told to replace their lunch break cigarette with 7-Up. Homemakers heard the beverage would keep their smiles intact through endless washing. Stressed students received promises of focus and composure before testing. The pitch was straightforward. When life weighs you down, the answer isn't introspection or time off, it's a beverage. The wording stayed deliberately unclear. Vintage 7-Up advertisements never directly claimed this cure's sadness. Instead, they skirted the concept with phrases like unlocks the sunshine and revives you when exhausted, anxious, or melancholy. It became the carbonated equivalent of self-improvement literature, just simpler to consume and far less prone to collecting dust on shelves. The imagery proved equally strategic. Advertisements displayed impossibly content families. Father arriving from the office, necktie still straight, hair perfectly groomed, mother radiant, never overwhelmed, kids neat and obviously not shrieking or hurling playthings. Everyone shares 7-Up, beaming like they'd struck gold and promptly purchased citrus orchards. Look carefully and you'd notice even the family dog appeared more relaxed than contemporary adults. The true brilliance lay in borrowing credibility from science and healthcare. Bottles highlighted their lithium content, while for health and good cheer plastered everything. Customer stories claimed physicians endorsed 7-Up for calming stomachs and lifting spirits through constant repetition. The country collectively concluded lithium meant medically sanctioned. Since most people didn't understand lithium, they figured it resembled vitamins, just with superior marketing. There existed a quiet suggestion that consuming 7-Up meant participating in something contemporary and scientific. Uncertainty filled the world, but that vibrant green bottle represented advancement. Advertisements featured terms like purity and wholesome, strengthening the fantasy that soda transcended treats, becoming self-care you could purchase in quantity for less than single aspirin. Naturally, contemporary perspective reveals the ridiculousness. Drink for happiness ranks alongside buy soap for beauty. But during the 30s, with anxiety a constant companion, this message resonated with desperate believers. Therapy applications and guided meditation didn't exist. They had marketing pledging emotional wellness lived inside bottles. When you spot a cheerful lemon character or carbonated beverage promising positive energy, just remember, selling happiness isn't novel. This country has perpetually craved simple solutions, ideally served cold. Briefly, it meant opening bottles, taking swallows, and letting carbonation dissolve concerns. If you imagine 1930s childhood involved exclusively running outdoors, building makeshift vehicles and weathering dust storms through determination and marbles, reconsider. For surprisingly many children, childhood also included drinking lemon-lime soda containing pharmaceutical lithium. Correct. Correct. While struggling with arithmetic, your preferred refreshment gently altered your nervous system. Welcome to the nation that inadvertently conducted widespread clinical testing via beverage sections. Let's establish context. Typical 30s kids began days with responsibilities, continued with education, possibly, and finished avoiding parental stress about everything from economic collapse to polio. Lucky ones stopped at neighbourhood pharmacies for 5-cent rewards, frigid, sparkling 7-Up. For children, pure delight existed. Nobody understood empty calories, sugar raised no concerns, and absolutely nobody examined labels noticing the lithium component. Envision yourself at marble soda counters, legs swinging from elevated seats. The fountain attendant, a local teenager with powerful forearms and even stronger ingredient indifference, pours your glass, slides it across, and grins. Fixes whatever troubles you, he announces, as though children face real troubles. Within universes constructed from summer days and lemon bubbles, parents adored it equally. Why resist? When children should be visible, silent, and preferably not yelling, 7-Up represented gentle salvation. The advertisements practically composed themselves. So innocent, so pure, serve it to babies. Certain campaigns featured babies sipping from glasses, large eyes radiating innocence and quite probably chemical serenity. In homes where bedtime tales frequently surrendered to bedtime pandemonium, 7-Up rounds became rituals matching toothbrushing, except with significantly more quantifiable outcomes. The amusing part is, nobody considered it medicating children. Before attention deficit diagnoses, nobody stressed about focus or hyperactivity. If kids ricocheted off walls, they required outdoor time and soda, not counselling. Emotional swings weren't conditions, just maturation. Therefore, while contemporary parents debate screen exposure and artificial colours, 30s parents debated whether second lithium soda glasses exceeded reasonable limits. For reference, they did. Educators didn't protest either. If anything, generations of students quietly consuming 7-Up during breaks possibly simplified classroom management. Fewer meltdowns, fewer disruptions, and perhaps additional silent reading sessions. The soda generation classroom emphasized less gold star recognition and more unintentional collective mood regulation experiments. But what actually occurred experientially? Imagine being energetic, ambitious children, suddenly experiencing gentle, unexplainable peacefulness. One moment arguing over trading cards, next contentedly sitting in shade watching clouds pass. The world remains vast and puzzling, but now slightly less threatening, somewhat gentler-edged. Summer vacation captured in bottles with side effects nobody investigated. Naturally, exceptions existed. Some kids insisted they disliked the flavour, too lemony or less enjoyable than root beer. Others wanted carbonation alone, not calming undertones. But for most, 7-Up became as natural to childhood as skinned knees and yard activities. Unlike castor oil or mysterious cough medicine, it actually pleased palates. Did parents ever sense something deeper happening? Perhaps. But before warning stickers, litigation, or basic child psychology understanding, most adults attributed kids' positive moods to outdoor activity, hard labour, and possibly mysterious soda blessings. Not until 1948 did regulators finally question should pharmaceutical mood stabilizers reach children through soda. Negative. Lithium got eliminated. But the soda generation legend persisted an epoch when childhood sparkled brightly and strangely peacefully. If you wonder why grandparents seemed so composed, perhaps it transcended nostalgia. Perhaps 7-Up quietly authored entire American childhood chapters, one lithium lemon lime bottle at a time. It's Wednesday afternoon, 1937. Kitchen radios hum, laundry dances on lines, and your mother stands at counters, hair impeccably styled and nerves nearly unravelling. She survived another morning of sibling fights, shattered plates, and looming threats of unexpected judgmental neighbour arrivals. But when 3 o'clock arrives, she reaches into iceboxes, pulling out modern miracles, saving afternoons. 7-Up bottles. They're lemony, fizzy, and per every publication and the most delightful soda attendant around. So pure, so wholesome. Serve them to babies. Let's establish atmosphere. 30s parenting wasn't pastel-filtered social media fantasies, it was disorder, duty, and relentless pressure producing well-mannered children without mental breakdown. Gentle parenting meant losing your voice from shouting and surrendering, but with 7-Up refrigerated, you avoided choosing between patience and sanity. Just pour glasses, hand kids straws, and let Lithium handle heavy lifting. Mothers cherished 7-Up because marketing targeted them directly. Forget contemporary anxiety over sugar levels or questionable ingredients. Then the critical term was wholesome. The advertisements weren't subtle. They depicted rosy-cheeked infants, smiling mothers, and orderly kitchens never witnessing tantrums. The entire family beverage. One advertisement declared, guaranteeing 7-Up kept everyone revived, joyful, and, though never explicitly mentioned, noticeably more mellow. It transcended advertising brilliance. The entire serving ritual felt refined. Mothers reached for finest glasses, added ice cubes, and poured bubbling tonics with pharmacist flourishes. Kids gathered around, eyes widened, hoping for extra portions. Even fathers participated, enjoying glasses after lawn maintenance or automotive repairs, sometimes winking, suggesting perhaps, just perhaps, adulthood wasn't exclusively bills and discomfort. Truth is, 7-Up simplified family existence. It transformed bedtime into manageable procedures. It dulled rainy day and teething difficulties. Mothers offered it to visitors without hesitation, knowing lemon-lime drinks seemed as safe as dairy or juice. Actually, some mothers mixed it into homemade cough remedies, which somehow represented the decade's most transparent product labelling. Let's discuss the research, or its absence. Most 30s mothers lacked medical publication or regulatory warning access. Their information came from conversations, family customs, and advertisements filling ladies' home journal pages. If magazines endorsed something, it was legitimate, and if neighbours' children settled after 7-Up glasses, well, that provided sufficient evidence. "You appear so tranquil," one mother would tell another, passing chilled bottles like weekly survival secrets. And maybe somehow they were. There's something almost endearing about the involved trust. Mothers believed beverage companies prioritized family welfare. They believed cheerful advertisement faces, neat store bottle displays, and that modern science could simplify domestic life. Nobody worried about child over-medication. The concept barely registered. The only noticed side effect was sudden mysterious nap cooperation. Obviously, hindsight judges harshly. Today we recognise absurdity in marketing psychoactive beverages to infants and labelling them wholesome. But in that pre-warning era, when mothers balanced responsibilities, anxiety and hungry kid parades, 7-Up offered rare hope. Hope beverages could solve issues. Hope happiness might arrive with bubbles. So next time vintage advertisements show serene mothers and smiling straw-sipping babies, remember they weren't naive. They tried their best with available resources in perpetually overwhelming worlds. And if slight lithium sweetened life, well, who judges them? 30s and 40s. America was a nation anxious about virtually everything: economic depression, global conflicts, dust storms, newfangled jazz, and whether neighbours criticised your lawn. Yet beneath cultural anxiety, something peculiar occurred. People were calmer than headlines indicated. They were, actually, a accidentally relaxed citizenry, thanks to shared rituals, appearing innocent, but quietly revolutionising mood regulation. Opening 7-Up bottles. Imagine this. You're living when therapy serves the wealthy, meditation belongs to distant monks, and self-care means using soap and hot water identically timed. Emotional management isn't discussed. It's achieved through family-sized pies, stoic attitudes, or, if fortunate, lemon-lime soda. Except this soda isn't merely sugar and carbonation. It contains lithium, the active component contemporary psychiatrists prescribe for severe mood conditions. Only then, it distributed like confections. You awaken, stress over finances, then remember cold 7-Up bottles waiting in iceboxes. You pour glasses, initial sips taste sharp and refreshing. Next thing known, your day's edges feel somewhat softer. Your supervisor shouts. You nod, slightly glazed, and think, he probably requires soda. Radio announces another bank collapse, and you shrug, refill glasses, and resume crosswords. It's not that existence is simpler, it just feels more removed. It's not exclusively adults experiencing this mysterious composure. The lithium wave swept every demographic. Children who once possessed caffeinated ferret energy now sat quietly in church benches, serene and sticky-mouthed. Teenagers, instead of sulking on porches, discussed weekend plans without dramatic eye movements. Even grandmothers, infamous for chronic worrying and vocal casserole opinions, seemed mellowing, pouring 7-Up at Sunday meals and listening to children's complete narratives, and it was completely normal. Nobody questioned why national temperament carried gentle, sedated qualities. People credited pleasant weather, solid principles, or that new lemon-lime pharmacy drink. You didn't require prescriptions. You didn't need diagnoses. You just needed nickels and thirst for something different, something lighter than times themselves. Let's clarify. This wasn't deliberate social experimentation. The beverage industry simply spotted marketing opportunities promising refreshment, improved digestion, and cheerful dispositions. And the nation bit. Nobody paused questioning if soda doubling as mood stabilizers seemed excessively beneficial. Why spoil good things? If you noticed decreased irritability, you told friends to drink it also. If your kids napped longer or your partners less likely argued, you stockpiled crates. Era anecdotes exist that retrospectively read like accidental research. Families noted how arguments seemed dissolving. Office conflicts became courteous disagreements. Neighbourhood gatherings, once venues for suppressed civic fury, became oddly pleasant. One town reportedly held history's quietest municipal meeting, all members sipping sweating bottles and nodding agreeably. Even popular culture reflected newfound tranquility. Radio songs leaned toward cheerfulness. Comedies featured less slapstick fury and more relaxed, good-natured amusement. Social observers would later speculate this was simply American character. But anyone who's consumed mood, stabilizers, through beverages, knows more chemistry operated. Obviously, skeptics existed, those wondering if national ease seemed too effortless, but they were easily outnumbered by everyone enjoying 12-ounce relaxation. For nearly 20 years, the nation's baseline was mildly satisfied. It was the lithium wave, an epoch when life's sharpest difficulties lost bite and everyone learned managing things one sip at a time. So next time hearing someone sigh about bygone days and how people just seemed calmer, friendlier and more balanced, don't credit all to nostalgia or neighbourly principles, credit the bubbles. Briefly, the nation was a country that drank troubles down and barely recognised how pleasant it felt. Welcome to 30s beverage battlefields, where the nation's greatest competitions weren't merely between baseball clubs or politicians, but between glass bottle contents sweating behind counters. On one side, the jittery caffeine-driven powerhouse called Coca-Cola. On the other, the cool, collected lemon-lime challenger laced with lithium. 7-Up. It was fizz warfare, marketing and national temperament. Caffeine versus composure, Rush, rush, rush versus let things flow. Choose your beverage. Choose your character. Let's establish the scene. In depression depths, people needed all available help, simply rising from beds. Enter Coca-Cola, a beverage promising energy, vitality, and faintest traces of legal cocaine remnants. It was the drink for labourers, hustlers, and anyone needing to pause and refresh, preferably before their second daily employment. The advertisements displayed grinning youth with sparkling eyes and upright bearing, all prepared to conquer life's endless obligation lists thanks to bracing caffeine shots. But just seats away at marble soda fountains, the atmosphere was entirely different. 7-Up didn't want to energize you, it wanted to help you relax. The ad language boasted about nerves, calmed spirits, elevated the target demographic, literally everyone who ever felt anxious, which then was the entire nation where Coke promised productivity. 7-Up promised tranquility. It was less pause and refresh and more sit and examine wallpaper a while. Consider it the original energy drink versus herbal tea confrontation, except both came in glass containers and nobody required identification purchasing either. The distinction was tangible, even in family dynamics. Parents pouring Coke for children mornings might be enrolling for afternoons of wall bouncing and spontaneous living room wrestling. Families reaching for 7-Up, meanwhile experienced houses so silent you could hear ice melting. Sometimes in identical neighbourhoods, one family's kids were outside mowing lawns at record pace while neighbours sat quietly colouring their lemonade moustaches, revealing nothing but absolute serenity. Obviously, the soda conflicts weren't just about temperament, they were about brand identity too. Coca-Cola was the veteran, the cola monarch, the drink that survived prohibition by reinventing itself as a temperance beverage. It marketed itself as American optimism and hustle symbols. 7-Up, by contrast, played the modern miracle role, an emblem of drinkable science. The branding didn't just promise refreshment, it promised enhancement, more vitality or more peacefulness, whichever beverage aisle side you preferred. Retailers noticed the division too. At local drugstores you'd see men in work attire grabbing Cokes before heading out to paint residences or repair automobiles. At Next counters, mothers in floral dresses and children in school uniforms would order 7-Up rounds before heading home for homework and responsibilities. Soda attendants. When the era's diplomats never chose sides, they just poured, smiled, and sometimes whispered, "Rough day?" as they slid lemon-lime glasses your direction. Meanwhile, the advertisements fueled the rivalry. Coke ads emphasised thirst knows no season, depicting workers and athletes, while 7-Up posters promised, "You'll feel like yourself again." If Coke was the action beverage, 7-Up was the recovery drink. It's challenging imagining a more perfect metaphor for internal national tension, torn between pushing forward and taking breaks between bootstraps and bubble baths. Ironically, sometimes identical households stocked both. Mornings began with bracing Coca-Cola to shake off sleep and face days. Evenings after dinner called for 7-Up rounds, a family ritual replacing bedtime drama with gentle yawns and sudden bathroom sharing willingness. The soda conflicts never crowned victors because truth was people needed both. They needed something to get them moving and something to bring them down. Productivity and tranquility, drive and rest, served chilled in glass bottles and always within arm's reach. So next time you crack open cans and wonder whether you're team caffeine or team composure, remember this is not a new conflict. It's a ritual as old as soda fountains themselves, fizzing with hustle and hush history. Each bubble rising up to remind you that sometimes it's acceptable to let your beverage decide your temperament. Let's admit it, bib label lithiated lemon-lime soda doesn't exactly flow smoothly. It sounds less like thirst quenchers and more like something you'd discover at Victorian medicine cabinet bottoms. But that was the original name Charles Leiper Griggs attached to his cheerful, mood-altering concoction. And for nearly 10 years, that's what the nation drank, either from trusting science or because nobody could pronounce it and just pointed at bottles. But by mid-30s, marketing winds were shifting. The era of mysterious pharmaceutical-sounding brands was yielding to something catchier, punchier, and easier to order in crowded soda establishments. Enter the Great American Transformation. 7-Up. 2 syllables, a quick nod to something mysterious and absolutely zero hint of mood-stabilizing pharmaceuticals. The transformation was more than a name alteration. It was an evolution, an act of marketing judo and possibly one of soda history's greatest pivots. The reasons for the switch were in authentic 30s fashion, wrapped in some legend and lots of creative storytelling. Some say it's because 7 ingredients existed in the formula, or that 7 was a fortunate number. Others swear it refers to lithium's atomic mass, which is conveniently around 7. There's a persistent myth that it was named for the original 7-ounce containers. And then, naturally, there's the simplest explanation. It just sounded cool, upbeat, and clean. Everything the nation wanted in soda during a decade that was anything but. Picture yourself sliding onto bar stools at crowded soda fountains, eager to order beverages. Would you rather request a bib label, lithiated lemon-lime soda, or a 7-Up? The answer is obvious. One sounds like prescriptions. The other sounds like celebrations. In an era when every brand was racing to abandon dusty apothecary images, 7-Up became shorthand for modernity, simplicity, and thanks to relentless advertising, optimism, the transformation campaign was a masterclass in marketing magic. Old advertisements focused on medicinal properties promising to cure nerves and refresh bodies. New 7-Up ads played up fun, the family angle and the notion that you could enjoy existence and soda without overthinking. The bright green logo, the crisp new name, and the simple label invited you to drink first and ask questions never. But the transformation genius went beyond just the name. It gave the company a clean slate. They could keep the lithium for a little while longer and all the supposed health benefits, but discard the intimidating, lithiated language. Instead, they shifted the narrative to one of pure refreshment. The science was still there, humming quietly in the background. But you didn't have to contemplate it. You could just be joyful, take a sip and enjoy a soda that now felt more like a lifestyle than a prescription, and the public embraced it with open arms. Soda fountains nationwide swapped out their dusty bib label signage for the snappy 7-Up, and sales climbed. It's a testament to branding power. With a few syllables and a new font, the identical drink went from sounding like homework to tasting like recess. Obviously, the product didn't actually change, at least not initially. Every bottle still contained a touch of lithium, still delivered that peculiar, gentle composure that kept Depression-era families so serene. But the narrative changed. Now you weren't just drinking medicine, you were part of a movement. You were on the upswing. It was aspirational, energetic, and most importantly, easy to say. There's a lesson here for anyone who's ever tried to rebrand themselves, their business, or even just their social media handle. Sometimes what you need isn't a new recipe, it's a new narrative. One that invites people in, makes them feel contemporary, and lets them forget, if only for a moment, what came before. So next time you see 7-Up cans glinting in vending machines, remember there's marketing genius inside every bubble. A reminder that sometimes the difference between a medical curiosity and an American icon is just 6 fewer syllables and significantly more fizz. Imagine this. You're perched on chrome-tipped soda fountain stools, a nickel sweating in your palm, and across the marble bar, the soda attendant is prepping a 7-Up bottle. He isn't just pouring a beverage, he's performing a tiny chemistry experiment right now. There's a certain routine to the silence of it. The sound as the seal breaks, the liquid rushing up the bottle, the glass getting filled with fizzy lemon and lime. It looks ordinary, but behind every bright, bubbly swallow is a mix of science, business, and an essential American desire for everything to be new and improved. Let's talk specifics for a minute. Carbonation is, at its heart, a sophisticated piece of physics. The first soda makers discovered a way to push and trap carbon dioxide gas into the liquid. When you release that trapped pressure, you hear the pop. Tiny air pockets rocket to the top, bringing with them an exhilarating tingle that wakes up your senses and fools your brain into thinking something exceptional just happened. That feeling is deliberate. It's pure dopamine delivered in a serving glass. In a world full of dull errands and endless depressing information, a drink that snaps and crackles was the closest thing to a miracle that most people would ever experience. But the appeal is more than just bubbles. 7-Up, just like all popular soft drinks, was a clever combination of acid, sugar and taste. The tart flavour came from citric acid, giving the lemon lime its signature sharp bite. The sweetness, sourced from simple cane sugar, softened the edge. Blend in a few drops of proprietary flavourings and you had the future of taste for the American consumer, always chasing the next satisfying rush. This delicate equilibrium was crucial. Too harsh, and you'd make a face. Too sweet, and you'd get sick of it. The brilliance was making it perfectly balanced. Now, about that controversial additive, lithium carbonate. It was more than a quirky selling feature. It was bold, pharmaceutical innovation. Lithium salts, as we know, had been sold as a mood-elevating medicine slipped into mineral water and tonics for many years. By putting it into 7-Up, Charles Grigg wasn't just adding flavour, he was pitching a new version of well-being. This was a clear soda that promised to lift your spirits through both flavour and disposition. Each bubble didn't just carry taste, it carried the vague, unspoken guarantee of emotional equilibrium, all thanks to modern scientific breakthroughs. But the real spark came from the meeting of chemistry and commerce during the 1930s and 40s. America was captivated by forward progress, and nothing embodied progress quite like a drink that whistled, sizzled, and shone. 7-Up's marketing fully embraced this idea. "Feel right, drink 7-Up," one advertisement declared, showing complicated diagrams of molecules and florid language about simple refreshment. The company adopted the visual style of research laboratories, test tubes, beakers, and men in white coats, all to sell the concept that this was not merely a drink, but a scientifically proven route to a better mood. Behind the scenes, the bottling process itself was a marvel. Huge containers mixed syrup with highly purified water, chilled and filtered to perfection. Bottling facilities were modern industrial wonders, humming with moving belts, automated capping machines, and by the middle of the century, large glass walls so the public could truly admire the industrial technology. The sound of the fizz wasn't confined to your glass. It was the audio track of industrial advancement, a cheerful, bubbly song announcing that America was moving ahead, one case of lemon-lime soda at a time. Consumers, naturally, weren't concerned with the technical specifics. They cared about the performance. The noise and fizz of a newly opened bottle made up half of the full enjoyment. Children waited by the counter to watch the soda dispenser pour the drink, hoping to see an especially impressive eruption of bubbles. At home, mums and dads opened bottles at dinner, toasting small achievements and bigger hopes. The fizz became a metaphor. We may be drained, but we're still bright. There's a distinct reason 7-Up became so iconic. It wasn't only the taste, or even the lithium. It was the way it managed to make daily routines feel a little more special with every sip. You weren't simply having a soda, you were engaging in a scientific trial, an act of forward movement, and a tiny protest against the general unhappiness. The chemistry was reliable, the capitalism unstoppable. So the next time you watch bubbles float up in your glass, remember you're observing more than just carbon dioxide at work. You're witnessing a history where innovation, aggressive selling and optimism combined in a lemon-lime fizz that promised, if only for a brief interval, to make everything just a little easier to handle. Imagine this. It's 1933. Prohibition has finally ended in a boozy, worn-out collapse. America is slowly recovering from a national intoxication, looking at empty liquor bottles and broken bathtubs and asking itself, what's next? For over 10 years, legal consumption of alcohol was impossible for anyone who didn't know the secret code or possess a certain kind of coat. And while secret bars and illegal liquor kept a lot of good times going, the nation's taste had subtly changed. In stepped the soda fountain, a bright, busy haven that converted the American taste for rebellion into a simple craving for something carbonated. Let's be honest, Prohibition never truly stopped drinking. It just moved the location and introduced everyone's grandmother to high-proof liquor. But when the Volstead Act finally dissolved, the custom of gathering in a dim, smoky pub was no longer the sole way to relax. Suddenly, the neighbourhood drugstore, with its shining counter, chrome seats, and rows of colourful glass bottles, seemed completely respectable and, most importantly, legal. The soda fountain, originally a side venture for pharmacists, quickly became the new neighbourhood hub, and at its core, vibrating with every hiss of escaping gas, was the simple lemon-lime guarantee of 7-Up. Soda became something more than just a drink. It was a shared tradition, an official emblem, and, let's be real, a quick stand-in for that missed afternoon cocktail. People of all ages collected at the pharmacy for a soft drink, sharing the same counter where, just a few years earlier, worried druggists quietly mixed up medicinal tonics with a generous amount of strong alcohol. 7-Up wasn't about getting tipsy, it was about feeling better, about relaxing, laughing a little, and forgetting for a whole 15 minutes at least that your manager, your bank, or your aching feet were acting up. And in a surprising twist, 7-Up's lithium content gave it a considerable advantage over the competition. While Coca-Cola and root beer provided caffeine, sugar, and a sense of old times, 7-Up gave something truly unique: chemical calmness. For adults suddenly adapting to legal sobriety and, perhaps realizing that Uncle Marvin was significantly less charming without his daily mixed drink, the soothing fizz of a lemon-lime soda offered a soft landing. It was, essentially, a quick transition drink, the country's first non-alcoholic cocktail with a chemical benefit. Soda fountains treated this newfound importance seriously. The act of going out for a soda was filled with all the elegance of cocktail hour. The soda dispenser, a mix of bartender and local counsellor, would pour your beverage with a dramatic flourish, maybe even adding a bright red cherry for visual effect. Friends stayed for hours, joking, flirting, and sharing personal stories over cold, sweating glasses. In a world before streaming video or social media, the pharmacy counter was the social network. You heard the local news, arranged a date, argued about sports, and forgot, just for a while, about the troubles outside. And children, who had largely been banned from the secret bar scene, now became full citizens of the soft drink nation. For them, the end of Prohibition didn't mean less fun. It meant more. More reasons to leave the house, more chances to beg for a coin, and more opportunities to join the adults in a social custom that was, finally, family appropriate. The post-dinner serving of 7-Up became as American as any tradition, except with more bubbles and less general anxiety. Meanwhile, the older generation was just as thankful. No longer did they need to explain why they spent the evening at a club or come home smelling of illegal liquor and regret. Instead, they poured themselves a bottle of 7-Up, sat with the family, and smiled, maybe a little wide-eyed but genuinely content for the first time in a while. And no one needed to conceal the empty glass bottles. The advertising teams noticed this major shift and acted on it. Ads for 7-Up in the post-Prohibition era showed healthy families, clear glassware, and cheerful kitchens. "Everybody's happy when there's plenty of 7-Up," one campaign announced. There was no hint of scandal or naughtiness, just the promise that family togetherness and good moods could be found in a 12-ounce bottle. So while the end of Prohibition flooded the market with alcohol, it also created a huge, eager void in the culture. One that soda quickly moved to occupy. And for a generation used to bending the rules and drinking liquor from ordinary mugs, The honest pleasure of a lemon-lime fizz was nothing less than groundbreaking. Next time you open a soda and hear the pop and the hiss, remember you're not just having bubbles, you're sipping on a piece of history. A cheer to the short, brilliant time when America exchanged strong alcohol for lithium, and everyone was better off because of it. Go back in your mind to the 1930s when the professional lines between doctor, pharmacist and enthusiastic local soda dispenser were more than slightly blurred. America was a place where health suggestions came as easily from a guy in a white coat as from the person who had just finished cleaning the pharmacy floor. It was the unregulated frontier of popular medicine, and for one brief, sparkling moment, physicians actually recommended and sometimes officially prescribed 7-Up. To be clear, medical standards were quite relaxed. The American health system was still developing its structure. The government agency overseeing food and drugs was in its immature, awkward phase. Penicillin was an unverified idea, and no one had yet figured out that cough syrup should not contain powerful narcotics. It was a time when if something felt pleasing, tasted good, or stopped you from yelling into your pillow, it must have been beneficial for your health. This was the exact attitude that allowed a lemon-lime soda, boosted with lithium, to stroll confidently into the pharmacy, put a new label on itself, and declare itself a legitimate medicine. And that is precisely what happened. Doctors were quick to embrace 7-Up, not simply because it was a popular taste, but because its lithium-enhanced recipe seemed almost impossibly effective. Lithium salts were being actively researched as possible treatments for everything from painful kidney stones to depression, and no one was especially concerned about negative effects. Medical reports praised lithium as a miracle treatment for modern stress. If you felt anxious, couldn't sleep, or were just tired of your children's constant antics, the standard medical instruction was have a glass of lithiated soda and contact me tomorrow. Try to visualize the scene. You visit your doctor complaining of the general feeling of hopelessness that naturally comes from living through a widespread economic disaster. And instead of a serious warning or a bitter medical drink, you get a smile and an official coupon for 7-Up. Nervous? 7-Up. Stomach trouble? 7-Up. Your spouse is insufferable? Well, you get the picture. The humble lemon-lime soda took its place alongside common painkillers, hot water bags, and that unidentifiable blue cream your grandmother insisted worked wonders. This was not only about the advertising campaigns. Doctors actually risked their professional credibility. Signed recommendations from physicians were printed across magazine pages. I suggest 7-Up for my most anxious patients, a healthy aid to digestion. It was a golden era for beverage producers. All they needed to do was print a few words in an elaborate font, throw in a picture of a white lab coat, and instantly they had professional credibility. In fact, hospitals even kept the product in stock. You would see nurses in clean uniforms serving cool glasses of 7-Up to patients recovering from procedures. For young children struggling with fevers or stomach illnesses, the gentle fizziness and sweet taste were a welcome comfort. Never mind that their moods were being ever so slightly regulated in the process. The gentle sound of the bottle cap opening became as vital a part of the recovery process as a bowl of hot soup or a warm cloth. But the most unbelievable part? No one bothered to ask many hard questions. If it came in a sealed bottle, was suggested by a medical professional, and tasted appealing, it was practically health food. There were no warning notices, no disclaimers about side effects, and no one conducting long-term studies on children's soda consumption. Who had the time for caution when the world was busy perfecting synthetic fabrics and celebrating the widespread adoption of electricity? A few doubters did exist, of course. A small number of concerned scientists wondered if providing mood stabilizers to the entire population, especially young children, was a sensible long-term plan. But their quiet concerns were drowned out by the cheerful sound of a country addicted to the promise of a better disposition in every drink. Besides, America was already convinced. If the doctor says it's beneficial for you, and it's available right at the corner pharmacy, what possible harm could come from it? So for nearly 20 years, a medical checkup could conclude not with unpleasant medication, but with an official prescription for a refreshing lemon-lime beverage. 7. Up was a drink, a source of comfort, and in its unique fashion, a symbol of a time when medicine was as much about simple hope as it was about actual healing. Next time you see a white lab coat featured in a soft drink commercial, remember it's a direct reference to that golden age of "the doctor approves it," when bubbly enthusiasm and medical authorization poured from the same exact bottle and America happily consumed it all. Welcome to the ultimate age of American soft drinks, a period when beverages were less about simple hydration and more about accidental chemistry experiments. If you've ever wondered why your great-grandparents seemed consistently cheerful, look no further than their regular intake of sodas containing substances that today would get a simple chemistry set confiscated at an airport security checkpoint. The drinks aisle was essentially a museum of eccentric scientists, and every single drink came with a subtle dose of unofficial medicine. Let's begin with the biggest name, Coca-Cola. In the late 1800s, Coca-Cola's special ingredient wasn't just caffeine, it contained real, actual cocaine. John Pemberton, a professional pharmacist with both an addiction to morphine and a talent for marketing, decided the best treatment for a headache, or practically anything else, was to mix two of the most stimulating compounds known to mankind. The outcome? A beverage so powerfully invigorating that people didn't just enjoy it. They felt confident they could outrun a locomotive. For years, each glass contained a small dose of coca leaf extract, just enough to give you a noticeable boost of energy and perhaps inspire you to organize your socks by color at 3 in the morning. But Coca-Cola was not alone in this competition for chemical innovation. Across the country in Texas, a pharmacist named Charles Alderton created Dr. Pepper, a stimulating drink featuring not only 23 mysterious tastes, but also pepsin, a digestive enzyme extracted from pig stomachs. Marketed as an official aid to the digestive system, Dr. Pepper became the preferred drink for anyone who wanted their post-meal burps to be scientifically maximized. If it tasted slightly medicinal, that's because, at one point, it actually was. Then there was Pepsi-Cola, yet another pharmacist's creation. Its original claim to popularity? The name itself was a reference to dyspepsia, a formal term for common indigestion. It wasn't designed to perk you up or calm you down, just to help you belch a little more comfortably. Inspiring advertising at its peak. Pepsi, just like its competitors, had no problem blurring the line between the pharmacy and simple refreshment. The world's first popular soft drinks, after all, were invented behind the drugstore counter, not the massive bottling plant. The beverage industry was truly an unsupervised laboratory for wild experimentation. Root beers and sarsaparillas claimed to cleanse the blood. Ginger ales were used to calm the nervous system, and energy drinks contained everything from cola nut extract to surprisingly large amounts of alcohol. Some sodas even featured bromides, chloral hydrate, or opiate-based substances. For those especially difficult days at the office, you didn't just get a quick sugar rush, you got a complete neurochemical adjustment. And don't forget the truly bizarre additions from the farm. Dr. Pepper's pepsin may have been the most famous, but there were also sodas that contained beef extract, bone marrow, and even fresh cow's milk. For instant energy and overall vitality, you could walk into a local pharmacy and order a tall glass of meaty soda, then finish it off with a quick shot of nerve tonic for that distinct 1930s sparkle. The modern farm-to-table movement had nothing on these original concoctions. Children, of course, were fully included in this beverage fun. Advertisements frequently showed babies sipping soda, toddlers holding bottles with comfortably lithium-calmed fingers, and school-aged children toasting good health with drinks packed with more stimulants than a modern high-energy product. Parents were guaranteed that these drinks were perfectly pure and healthy. Never mind the trace levels of mood-altering chemicals. If it was in a clear glass bottle and sparkled brightly in the sunlight, it was essentially a complete multivitamin. The federal regulator finally stepped in, but not before America had enjoyed a true golden age of caffeinated, carbonated, cocaine-infused fellowship. It was a wild, strange trip, one that left a deep impact not only on people's taste buds, but on the nation's overall attitude toward what is considered acceptable to consume. So the next time you pick up a can of soda and quickly scan the ingredients list, breathe a small sigh of relief. Artificial sweeteners and vague natural flavours may be mysterious, but at least you're extremely unlikely to discover cocaine, pig enzymes, or a surprise hint of lithium waiting for you. History's biggest hits were a little more literal and far more strange than anything you'll find in the drinks aisle today. For almost 20 years, Americans had been casually participating in a mass mood experiment, completely unaware that their preferred lemon-lime refreshment was dosed with a genuine prescription psychiatric drug. But all enjoyable things, especially those that involve unregulated pharmaceutical substances and the everyday drinking habits of small children, eventually have to end. By the late 1940s, the strange, fizzy frontier of medicinal soft drinks was about to meet its ultimate rival, the recently empowered, newly serious Food and Drug Administration. The party was officially wrapping up, and the slow, quiet realization was about to begin. It began with a noticeable shift in perspective. Science was quickly moving forward, and the federal regulator, finally growing into its powerful regulatory authority, began to notice that the country's huge beverage industry was still operating as if it were the previous century. For a period, nobody seemed to care what was put into soda as long as the taste was enjoyable. But by 1948, the general cultural mood had significantly changed. Penicillin X-rays and common vitamins were real, serious scientific advancements. People were finally starting to ask tough questions about dangerous side effects, especially when wholesome drinks left them strangely vacant-eyed or unusually eager to take a nap. Lithium, which had once felt as harmless as table sugar, was now the subject of rigorous professional scrutiny. Medical studies on its physical effects were being more broadly published. Doctors began to question whether it was truly a good idea to be handing out mood stabilizers to every single man, woman, and toddler who had a coin. Spoiler alert, it was not. Quiet discussions grew louder in professional medical circles, and the government took serious notice. The federal regulator began an intense investigation of ingredients in everything, including every popular soft drink. Suddenly, those proud lithiated labels that had once conveyed a sense of modern confidence became a serious legal and health liability. Reports started to emerge about the major risks of long-term lithium consumption: kidney damage, uncontrollable tremors, serious thyroid problems. You could practically hear the synchronized, nervous swallow from soft drink company executives. They had moved quickly from "drink this for guaranteed health" to "don't ask too many hard questions" in a remarkably short period. By 1948, the final decision was announced. Lithium carbonate was formally mandated to be removed from all soft drinks. There was no major public scandal, no dramatic screaming headlines, and certainly no big farewell press conference. Just a silent, rapid disappearance. The lithiated part vanished entirely from the product label. The official ingredient list became one line shorter, and the American populace continued with their daily lives, only slightly more agitated and with significantly less unintentional napping. The change was implemented so subtly that most consumers didn't even realize anything had been altered. Children continued to ask for their 7-Up, parents still served the drink at family meals, and the neighborhood soda fountain continued to hiss and pop, minus the psychoactive benefits. The sudden change marked the definitive end of an important era. For many years, 7-Up had existed in that odd, undefined space between a medicine and a simple refreshment, promising both good times and a scientifically balanced disposition. Now, stripped of its chemical advantage, it was simply a sweet lemon-lime soda. The company quickly changed direction, launching entirely new advertising campaigns focused instead on purity, general refreshment, and wholesome family enjoyment. Never mind the now missing medicinal miracle. The quiet, unpublicized federal crackdown didn't just change 7-Up, it signaled a major, permanent shift for the entire beverage industry. Gone were the reckless days when any ambitious pharmacist could boost a soda with whatever unique substance they happened to prefer. Now, ingredients had to be demonstrably safe, thoroughly tested, and non-mood altering. Mostly, caffeine somehow managed to survive the aggressive purge. America's general obsession with quick health fixes would never quite be the same again. Yet for a brief, incredibly sparkling time, a full generation of Americans found genuine peace in a glass bottle thanks to the magic of lithium and a local soda dispenser wearing a bow tie. And when the very last of the lithiated labels disappeared, they left behind a lasting legacy. Proof that sometimes what makes you feel immediately better in the short term isn't always what you want to be consuming for the long haul. So the next time you sip a modern 7-Up, remember you're enjoying the cleaned-up, federally regulated descendant of a true medicinal oddity, one that learned eventually to keep its serious science completely behind the scenes. One day you're enjoying your preferred lemon-lime soda, and life feels just a bit easier to manage around the sharp edges. Your demanding boss is still annoying, the bills continue to accumulate, and the neighbour's barking dog still targets your garden gnome, but somehow you just don't let it bother you. And then, almost without warning, something is different. The soda tastes exactly the same. The bubbles are still there, but the world suddenly feels slightly sharper, the constant news a little louder, and your children's small arguments far more irritating. Welcome to the national mood swing, the precise moment America's collective peace slipped away, one unlithiated bottle at a time. When the federal regulator silently ordered lithium out of 7-Up and its fizzy competitors in 1948, there was no public announcement, no catastrophic public warning, and absolutely no final parade for the nation's favourite accidental pharmaceutical mood stabilizer. The unique ingredient simply disappeared, wiped from the official label and, just as subtly, from the active bloodstream of millions of Americans. For 2 decades, families had been effortlessly reducing the intensity of daily life with every single serving. Now they were on their own, forced to face everyday frustrations without a chemical security blanket. Initially, most people didn't notice any dramatic change. The soda had the same familiar flavour, with that classic sharp bite and cheerful bubbles. Kids still demanded a cold bottle after a day at school. Parents still served it at parties, and the family refrigerator still hummed with a sense of promise. But slowly, in kitchens and school cafeterias across the nation, a strange new sensation started to creep in. Tempers flared a little more quickly. Family board games became slightly more aggressive. The neighbour's loud dog was, for some unknowable reason, even louder than it had been the week before. It was as if the entire country had suddenly shrugged off a heavy lemon-scented layer of insulation. The easy sense of calm that had once slipped invisibly into normal life was gone entirely, replaced by the baseline stress of modern human existence. People went back to searching for comfort in all the traditional ways. Long walks, large chocolate bars, daily radio drama broadcasts, or for the truly brave, difficult family therapy sessions right in the living room. It was as if America, after 20 years of gentle pharmacological assistance, had to quickly relearn how to cope with the everyday chaos of simply being alive. Of course, not every person was affected in the same way. Some people complained quietly that 7-Up used to taste fundamentally different, though they couldn't quite pinpoint the exact reason why. Hint, it was the subtle absence of mood stabilization. Others didn't miss a single beat, attributing their sudden irritability to the general stress of the era, their difficult children, or the undeniable fact that the neighbour's garden gnome genuinely did look incredibly smug that year. Companies, for their part, immediately went into intense crisis management mode. Without ever formally admitting that there was anything wrong to begin with, the new advertising blitz focused heavily on wholesomeness, undeniable freshness, and simple fun. Images of cheerful families, happy, smiling children, and bright, clean kitchens quickly replaced the old, vaguely medicinal promises. "You like it, it likes you," became the new official slogan. And absolutely no one spoke of nerves, pleasant dispositions, or anything that sounded even remotely pharmaceutical. It was all about great taste, a sparkling appearance, and innocent good times. Never mind the slight but noticeable rise in national grumpiness. Over the next few years, the collective public memory of lithium-laced soda slowly faded into an urban myth, then complete obscurity. By the 1960s, the mere suggestion that a soft drink could subtly alter your mood seemed completely absurd, a strange historical artifact of a much stranger, wilder past. The new cultural challenge became finding happiness, or at least a measure of contentment, the old-fashioned way, through genuine effort. People discovered their cheerful attitudes in other activities, church gatherings, community sports, or the frequent Saturday night outing, and if those traditional methods didn't work, well, there was always strong caffeine. But the great mood swing was undeniably real, even if it wasn't openly acknowledged at the time. America had endured economic depressions, massive global wars, and many restless nights with the helpful aid of a little extra chemistry. Then, suddenly, it was just them and the gentle bubbles. The fizz remained, but the essential calm was gone. So the next time you hear someone longingly refer to the good old days, just smile knowingly. Those days were fine, absolutely. But for a while, they were also a little bit medicated, and nobody realized the full extent of it until that subtle advantage was completely gone. When lithium silently disappeared from America's soft drink bottles in the late 1940s, it left more than just a void in the nation's ability to relax. It created a massive branding emergency. How exactly do you sell a popular drink that used to promise profound mental clarity, deep relaxation, and happy dispositions, when it is now just an ordinary soda? Welcome to the ultimate marketing pivot. The precise moment 7-Up successfully transitioned from a questionable pharmacy item to a simple family treat faster than you could say lithiated lemon lime. For many years, 7-Up's advertisements had heavily relied on pseudo-scientific claims for nerves, for better digestive health. The advertising language was intentionally clinical. The imagery was reassuringly medical, smiling professional doctors, crisp white lab coats, families sitting quietly together as if the only thing separating them from total chaos was a 12-ounce bottle. Even the product label itself sounded like it contained a prescription. But with the federal regulators' crackdown and lithium's swift removal, that established advertising strategy instantly fizzled. The company's first and most crucial step was to completely erase its own history, at least the part that involved actual, powerful mood stabilizers. Every single reference to lithiated anything was meticulously scrubbed from official labels, all advertisements, and any promotional materials overnight. The product's previously miraculous side effects were immediately replaced with a new, simple promise of pure refreshment. Instead of trying to market to your chronic anxiety or your nervous, jittery stomach, 7-Up was suddenly entirely focused on great taste, undeniable clarity, and wholesome, safe, family fun. The visual style shifted dramatically too. Gone were the lab coats and the overly complicated scientific diagrams. In came bright, sunny backyard barbecues, simple ball games, and families happily gathering in sunlit, modern kitchens. Happy children innocently sipped soda through paper straws, mothers smiled warmly from impeccably clean countertops, and fathers were suddenly fully present, totally attentive, and not at all in need of any chemical mood stabilization. "You like it? It likes you," the brand new slogan declared, as if the soda was simply your friendly neighborhood pal, no professional therapy required. It was a high-stakes move, but it completely succeeded. 7-Up's striking bright green branding, its sharp, clean typeface, and its sparkling clear colour made it look undeniably clean, thoroughly modern, and completely trustworthy in a post-war America obsessed with freshness, purity, and wholesome, clean living. The updated look was a perfect fit for the times. Advertisements now prominently featured fresh citrus slices, sparkling ice cubes, and confident claims that the drink contained nothing artificial. A deeply comforting and reassuring statement considering what had previously been an active ingredient. Now, 7-Up was actively positioned as the young cola, the fizzy, fun, innocent, clear alternative to the excessive caffeine and dark caramel colouring of the much larger cola rivals. This massive pivot wasn't solely about completely hiding the brand's past. It was a calculated move to capture a new and rapidly growing market. Suddenly, 7-Up wasn't just for weary adults trying to keep their nerves under control. It was explicitly for everyone. The company ran successful contests aimed at children, sponsored popular radio programs, and partnered directly with movie theatres. Drinking 7-Up quickly became a major social event, a required staple at casual birthday celebrations, large holiday dinners, and the new post-war cultural phenomenon, the backyard barbecue. Without its controversial chemical advantage, 7-Up leaned extremely heavily on simple lifestyle marketing. You no longer drank it because you desperately needed to calm down or feel better. You drank it purely because it was fun, festive, and, above all else, completely normal. The strange, experimental era of health tonic sodas was definitively over. The new, safe golden age of pure, bubbly refreshment had officially begun. Of course, a small amount of nostalgia still existed for the old days, especially among older, long-time customers who quietly insisted it used to do something for you. But for the next generation, 7-Up was simply the cool, clear one, a clean, blank slate for new family traditions and endless summer afternoons. Any remaining public memory of the drink's former pharmaceutical ambitions quietly vanished, replaced by fond recollections of cold glass bottles gently clinking together during summer picnics. Ultimately, the grand marketing pivot worked perfectly because it successfully tapped into what Americans desired most in the booming 1950s: simplicity, absolute safety, and guaranteed good times. The core product itself hadn't changed very much, except for, well, the whole Lithium situation. But the brand story had been completely rewritten. And in the world of successful soft drinks, the story you tell is half the actual flavour. So the next time you see a classic 7-Up advertisement promising wholesome fun for the entire family, just remember this: behind that cheerful, wholesome smile is a complete history lesson in successful corporate rebranding. Sometimes the most significant change in a glass bottle isn't what's actually inside, but the powerful story you choose to tell about it. By the 1960s and 70s, America was ready for an entirely different kind of cool. Gone completely were the slow days of crowded soda fountains and soda dispensers wearing ridiculous paper hats. In came a dynamic generation raised on the sounds of rock and roll, bright psychedelic colours, and the deeply held conviction that being totally normal was incredibly boring. The moment marked an uprising against stale tradition, against corporate names, and most certainly against anything resembling the soda your parents drank. That's when 7-Up launched its most daring shift yet, the Young Cola. The Young Cola marketing effort was pure brilliance. It didn't just set 7-Up apart from Coke and Pepsi. It framed the clear drink as a genuine misfit, an underdog, and a supportive partner for anyone who refused to follow the standard script. In place of heavy, sweet cola, you got a beverage that was transparent, sharp, and zesty, revitalizing both in flavour and spirit. The commercials were psychedelic, amusing, and proudly unconventional. Lime slices drifted in the air, carbonation danced in wild designs, and slogans dared you to make a choice by relaxing with something entirely original. Suddenly, selecting 7-Up was more than quenching a thirst, it was taking a stand. "We are the young cola," one advertisement proclaimed over a splash of dissolving ice and swirling lemon pieces. "You are not a sheep. Why should your beverage be?" That idea struck a chord with young people, an adolescence fed up with old habits and ready to question everything, right down to the liquid in their cup. The timing could not have been more perfect. The optimistic spirit of the post-war 1950s had faded, giving way to a restless, innovative mood that, thanks to television and mass communication, became impossible to ignore. People were actively seeking ways to distinguish themselves. They wore their hair longer, played their music louder, and yes, chose a soda that was greener and more bubbly. 7-Up became a fixture at dorm get-togethers, campus rallies, and later outdoor music festivals, always held by someone eager to embrace individuality. The young cola advertisements made fun of the over-serious tone of cola branding. No more serious, muted photographs of ideal dinner settings. Instead, 7-Up's campaigns burst with bright colour, comedy, and a playful nod to conformity. One memorable television ad showed a man with a Caribbean accent slicing limes and speaking lyrically about cola nuts. Because unlike its rivals, 7-Up had no cola nut, no caffeine, and no need to take itself seriously. "We're not hiding a secret recipe," the ads implied. "We have nothing to conceal. We are simply bubbles, citrus, and a good time." For families, the transformation was a relief. No anxiety, no stern warnings, no outdated promises of health advantages or medical properties. It was simply soda. You could pour it over a scoop of rainbow ice cream at a child's party, stir it into a summer drink, or drink it straight from a container at a backyard grill out. There was no wrong approach to enjoying it. If you felt good doing it, that was all the approval you needed. Of course, the brilliance of the young cola era wasn't just about breaking the rules. It was about straightforwardness and sincerity. A soda that offered no health guarantees, carried no complicated history, and allowed you to have a little enjoyment without feeling judged. 7-Up became a representation of being authentic. Whether that meant walking barefoot, customizing your van, or simply picking something other than the expected. It was cool. It was guilt-free, and it made every day feel a little more invigorating. By the close of the 1970s, 7-Up had secured its own spot in American popular culture. No longer just the soda your grandparents remembered, it was the beverage of the newest generation, clear, crisp, and proudly unique. So next time you see a vintage Uncola ad, smile and lift your bottle for a moment. Choosing 7-Up wasn't just about selecting a drink, it was a quiet act of defiance, and sometimes challenging the norm is as easy as reaching for the green bottle in the refrigerator. As the decades passed and America transitioned from the soda fountain to the supermarket aisle, something remarkable occurred. The history of 7-Up's Lithium years quietly vanished from the country's memory. The shared forgetfulness was nearly complete. The same nation that once gave out lemon-lime mood stabilizers to children with their lunch now looked back on those periods as simpler times, happily unaware of just how scientifically enhanced that simplicity actually was. In the 1950s and 60s, 7-Up had completely reinvented itself as safe and family-oriented. No one mentioned lithiated lemon-lime. Instead, it was the Uncola, the drink for cool, artistic teens and summer cookouts. Advertising campaigns washed away the past in waves of citrus ice cubes and smiling children with missing teeth. Most people never noticed anything was missing, except perhaps a faint feeling of unexplainable peace. The old advertisements, once proud of their scientific appeal, disappeared into antique stores and dusty storage spaces. If anyone discovered a magazine page promoting lithiated refreshment, it looked like a remnant of another dimension. Quaint, almost ridiculous. The very word lost all meaning, becoming as outdated as a bicycle from a bygone era or a radium treatment. Even the flavour of 7-Up subtly shifted after Lithium's removal was accepted without complaint. It just tastes a bit different now. People would just accept it, never realizing it was their brain chemistry that was remembering. What's fascinating is the sheer completeness of the revision. Soda fountains, those classic locations of chemistry and community, were replaced by vending machines. The tradition of gathering for a carefully mixed drink was swapped for the sound of cans in a home fridge. As the method of serving changed, so did the recollection. 7-Up was simply there, a soft drink among many with a bright, lasting taste. For most Americans, its early pharmaceutical period was covered under layers of sentimentality and modern advertising. The fading of memory wasn't just about the ingredients, it was about what defined the brand. The concept that medicine could come disguised as a treat, that health and fun could be bottled together, disappeared as the Food and Drug Administration and public health campaigns redefined the boundary between the drugstore and leisure. By the 1970s, if you told someone their favourite soda once contained a psychological drug, they would laugh it off as an urban legend. Perhaps in some other country they would joke, not here. Of course, a few people remembered, older pharmacists, hobbyists, or the occasional grandparent who enjoyed a good conspiracy. At family gatherings, they would mention how soda used to do something positive for you, and everyone else would roll their eyes, attributing it to the tall tales of old age. After all, what's more American than conveniently forgetting, especially when it involves comfort food and sentimentality? The cultural amnesia wasn't completely by chance. Beverage companies had every reason to let the past vanish. With every new advertising campaign, the Lithium years slid further into obscurity, replaced by bright packaging, cheerful mascots, and giveaways promising family trips or new bicycles. Drink 7-Up and win sounded much better than drink 7-Up and stabilize your mood. The past was left to the archives, the trivia experts, and the rare historian piecing together America's soft drink history. There's an old saying that taste is the sense most connected to memory. One sip of a childhood drink, and you're transported back to a sunny kitchen, the floor cool beneath your feet, the fizz tickling your nose. But what if the flavour you're recalling isn't only about sentimentality? What if your brain is quietly longing for something it once received with every lemon-lime bottle, a subtle, soothing ingredient now lost to history? For a specific generation, the flavour of 7-Up is like a half-remembered bedtime song. Maybe you drank it at birthday parties on summer afternoons, or when you were unwell and your mother poured it over crushed ice. It was sweet, tangy, and somehow calming, a flavour that seemed to go deeper than just the taste buds. And if you ever heard an older relative sigh, it used to taste different. You likely dismissed it as a sentimental memory. But science suggests they might be right. You see, taste is more than just molecules. It's chemistry and psychology intertwined in the regions of your brain. And for decades, when Americans drank 7-Up, they weren't simply sipping sugary water, they were consuming a small amount of lithium carbonate, a legitimate mood-stabilizing element. The effect was subtle, barely noticeable right away. But for some consumers, it became part of the entire experience. Calmness wasn't just a mental state, it was a flavour note, a sensation that lingered alongside the citrus. When lithium quietly disappeared from the ingredients, something subtle changed. The soda still fizzed, still had a kick, but the gentle therapeutic quality was absent. For most, the change was barely worth noting, just another adjustment in a world of updated recipes. But a few drinkers did notice. They insisted the drink had lost something. A certain something, a mellowness, an aftertaste of satisfaction. It's not so impossible to believe. The brain has its own way of connecting flavours to emotions. That's why a scent of cinnamon can make you feel comfortable, or the smell of a barbecue can make you nostalgic for a place you barely recall. When something as potent as lithium was included, even in tiny doses, the brain learned to associate that sip with a gentle feeling of peace. Decades later, the connection remains. You take a drink and for a brief moment expect something more profound. When it doesn't arrive, the brain senses the void. Psychologists refer to this as a flavor hedonic memory, the way our minds link flavors to feelings, attitudes, and even particular chapters of our lives. For millions of Americans, the original 7-Up became a source of comfort in a bottle, its taste forever connected to the soothing quality only lithium could deliver. Long after the chemistry changed, the memory persisted, a kind of invisible flavor hidden in plain sight. Consequently, modern drinkers sometimes find themselves looking for that old sparkle, that quiet happiness they can't quite identify. Some switch to other soft drinks, seeking a lost sensation. Others experiment with new calming beverages, hoping to rediscover what their childhood lemon-lime soda once offered. The desire is real, even if its origin is buried in the past. As the 20th century gave way to the 21st, America's relationship with soda became complicated. The original fantasy that happiness could be bottled, carbonated, and served over ice had transformed. Where there was once lithium and innocence, now there was aspartame, sucralose, and a deep, bubbling longing for something that was gone. The contradiction was clear. In an era obsessed with well-being, the nation was drinking more soda than ever, but chasing a comfort that always felt just out of reach. Diet sodas were the new ultimate prize. After generations of sugar, the focus shifted to calories and body size. People still wanted their lemon, lime, their cola, their ginger ale, but without the negative consequences. Enter the zero-calorie breakthrough. Slim cans, bright packaging, and promises that you could have all the taste with none of the guilt. Ads featured fitness classes, tennis outfits, and happy runners raising cans to enjoying their best life. It was the soda industry's newest sleight of hand. Happiness, but without the sugar. But something was missing. For all their tangy bubbles and prominent branding, modern diet sodas only offered the illusion of comfort. No one ever finished a diet 7-Up and sighed, "Ah, that's exactly what I needed," the way their grandparents might have after a glass of the original lithium-infused blend. The flavour was certainly present. The coldness, the opening sound, the promise of renewal. But the genuine spark was gone. People still reached for a chilled can during moments of stress or celebration, but now the effect was purely psychological, a habit, a recollection, a small hope that this time the fizz would solve every problem. Science had also caught up. Nutritionists issued warnings about artificial sweeteners. Studies appeared with headlines like "Can soda kill you and is your diet drink making you sad?" For every bottle of guilt-free happiness, there was a feeling of doubt. Meanwhile, new wellness drinks tried to fill the void. Beverages featuring vitamins, beneficial bacteria, antioxidants, or natural energy boosters. They promised tranquility, vigour, or mental clarity. And sometimes even all three in a single can. The pendulum swung wildly between worry about what was in your drink and worry about what you were missing. Yet the advertising stayed persistent. Zero sugar, zero guilt, 100% you. Modern soda commercials offered the fantasy that you could achieve everything. Sweetness without sugar, pleasure without penalty, comfort without laboratory ingredients, except for the ones you can't pronounce. The item was simplified, the calories tracked and the flavours reimagined as clean. But nobody was truly fooled, not really. People drank their diet sodas, felt briefly satisfied and waited for a happiness that never ever quite materialised. Even sentimentality was repackaged. New soft drinks and artisanal mixers featured old-fashioned fonts and throwback containers promising to recreate the golden age of soda fountains without any of the actual ingredients that made the original experience magical. It was like framing a picture of your grandparents' kitchen, then stocking your refrigerator with protein shakes and calling it classic living. There is a certain brilliance in America's capacity to sell hope in a bottle. And nowhere is this more evident than in the evolution of 7-Up and its soda rivals. It's not just a narrative of science and sweetness. It's a story of corporate magic, where a product created in the backroom of a drugstore became a multi-million-dollar symbol of invigoration, joy, and above all, opportunity. In the earliest days, 7-Up was marketed as bib-label lithiated lemon-lime soda, a name that practically required a prescription pad just to say aloud. It wasn't the only one in this respect. Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, Pepsi all started their lives as healing concoctions sold by chemists and ambitious business people who believed, or at least claimed, that a few unusual ingredients and a dash of chemistry could cure everything from headaches to sadness. Medical care and advertising went together. If a beverage could calm your anxiety, settle your stomach, or provide you with energy, why not share that with the world? This approach was not just clever, it was vital. The late 19th and early 20th centuries were a confusing time for health. Real medicine was difficult to access and fake remedies flourished. Soda companies realized that if you could put doctor recommended or healthy on the label, people would stand in line at the pharmacy counter. Every advertisement was a mix of scientific jargon and wishful thinking. Restores energy, relieves stress. For a cheerful disposition. It didn't matter if the proof was minimal or the side effects unknown. The important factor was the promise. The idea that this beverage could fix whatever was bothering you. But as regulation increased and public confidence changed, the soda industry adapted. The brilliance of corporate magic was that it didn't require changing the product, only the narrative. As soon as the Food and Drug Administration started frowning on mood-altering additives and incredible claims, soda companies changed their story. Now the appeal wasn't about curing illness or chasing away gloom. It was about enjoyment, social connection, and a good time. Out went the health claims. In came the lifestyle focus. The same bubbles, the same vibrant labels. But now the promise was renewal and togetherness, not wellness. The rebranding was effortless. Old advertisements showed white-coated physicians and laboratory equipment. Modern ones showcased sunlit picnics and children laughing in water sprinklers. 7-Up went from scientifically formulated to the Uncola, a symbol of freedom, simplicity, and easygoing fun. Every minor change in the story kept pace with the shifting times. The health obsession, the diet movement, even the rise of natural everything. The product didn't need to change much. It just needed a new legend to attach itself to. Long before wellness became a massive industry buzzword, it fizzed in a glass bottle behind the drugstore counter. The history of 7-Up and the entire era of medicinal sodas is truly a story about America's endless pursuit of self-improvement. We wanted to feel better, be better, live better, and if that meant seeking health and joy in a bubbly lemon-lime tonic, well, that was just fine in the end. Our need for wellness has always been as sparkling as our beverages. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, wellness wasn't about yoga classes or green drinks. It was about bubbling liquids that promised to clear your head, calm your anxieties, or aid your digestion, sometimes simultaneously. Pharmacies were places of hope. Behind those polished counters, soda jerks and chemists blended mixtures as innovative as any modern supplement. Dark root beers for blood cleansing, sarsaparilla for energy, cola for nervous exhaustion, and, naturally, lithiated lemon-lime for a cheerful disposition. There was genuine excitement surrounding these drinks, a belief that every new bottle was a step closer to overcoming life's problems. The science was weak, the optimism strong. Ads promised everything, and people were happy to believe a single sip could be an act of confidence in the future, a trust in advancement and the wonder of chemistry. It didn't matter if the wellness claims were, well, merely hopeful. The point was hope. And a little psychological effect, lightly carbonated, often achieved the desired result. As the decades went by, wellness changed its appearance. The miracle ingredients rotated. First lithium, then vitamins, then zero-calorie sweeteners, now plant extracts and beneficial bacteria. The advertising language became slicker, but the fundamental promise remained. Open this bottle and you'll feel a little lighter, a little happier, a little closer to the person you aspire to be. We are still chasing that desire. Today, modern grocery aisles are filled with functional drinks promoting everything from magnesium for tranquility to a certain amino acid for focus. The labels are cleaner, the claims more cautious, and the Food and Drug Administration more vigilant. But the craving is the same. We want relief in a can, hope in a bottle, happiness. You can drink between appointments. The flavors might change, but the desire is enduring. There's a subtle irony in how much today's wellness drinks resemble the tonics of the past. The names are new, but the sales pitch is ancient. A century ago, you relied on your soda jerk to fix your nerves. Now you rely on your favorite online personality, your nutritionist, or the design on a can. We still hold the same question. Will this help me sleep, make me sharper, keep me sane, or at least keep me awake during a video conference? And just like before, the expectation sometimes matters more than the actual product. The routine, the sound of the can opening, the mild burn of bubbles, the feeling of doing something beneficial for yourself can be as comforting as the chemical composition. We're not simply hydrating, we're taking control. We're seizing a small sense of stability in a confusing world. By the time 7-Up was fully commercialized and Lithium forgotten, America had calmed down, both literally and figuratively. But the dream of chemical happiness in a bottle never disappeared. It simply received new packaging, fewer side effects, and improved public relations. Imagine the collective sigh of relief as the nation moved from quietly medicated calm to a new era of pure refreshment. The old soda fountains, once full of conversations, flirtations, and the gentle haze of lithiated lemon lime faded into a memory. Bottled calm was out, and bottled fun was in. The advertising machinery shifted completely. 7-Up and its bubbly competitors became the cool drinks for picnics, parties, and commercials featuring flawless-looking families in modern kitchens. The subtle quiet of mood stabilizers was replaced with the cheerful burst of summer afternoons and backyard barbecues. But if you listened carefully, you could almost hear the country's collective anxieties humming a little louder. This was the true side effect. It wasn't a severe headache or a regretful next morning. It was the gradual realization that daily life was now experienced without a chemical advantage. Tempers were just a little more sensitive, the noise of daily stress a little sharper. People still looked for comfort in their drinks, but now they had to try a little harder for it. Some chased sugar rushes, others increased their caffeine consumption, and a few even experimented with the new wave of functional sodas promising wellness through vitamins, minerals, or unusual plant extracts. The impulse was the same. Take a sip of something and maybe life will feel a little easier. What's amusing is how quickly the nation pretended it never happened. Lithium in soda. Surely that was just a myth, a strange interlude in beverage history. The story faded into trivia game questions and the occasional article written by a nostalgic historian. The companies certainly did not discuss it. Instead, they emphasized innocence. Green bottles, clear soda, cartoon characters, and slogans about enjoyment, not feelings. It was as if the country had collectively chosen to forget about its brief affair with the drugstore in favor of bubbly, guilt-free pleasure. But the desire for mood-boosting magic never truly left. If you looked around, you could see it in the explosion of coffee shops. Espresso bars on every block, energy drinks lined up in bright rows, vitamin waters and wellness shots taking up more and more shelf space. Americans kept seeking a quick route to happiness, a fast solution for life's constant stress. And even as science and regulation tried to contain the secret, new versions kept appearing. plant extracts, certain types of bubbly water, drinks with extra benefits. The container had changed, but the thirst was the same. At the same time, the innocence of the soda fountain period became the material of legend. Grandparents spoke fondly of cheap sodas, ice cream floats, and the wonder of bubbles on a hot day. They didn't always mention the lithium, of course. Instead, the story was about simpler times, about family, about a world that felt a little softer. Perhaps it's easier to remember the shine and forget what made it sparkle. Before coffee makers and sophisticated bartenders, there were soda jerks, friendly young people in bow ties who were unknowingly giving the nation small doses of medication. Every pour of 7-Up was equal parts customer service and chemical delivery. You would sit down on a chrome stool, ask for a refreshing pick-me-up, and 15 minutes later you were calmer, happier, and definitely humming. They didn't just serve soda, they gave out tranquility with extra ice. The American soda fountain was more than a place for treats and light conversation. A drugstore was once an accidental wellness centre, and its soda jerk was the confident, white-aproned, quick-witted dispenser of relief. Step into any pharmacy between the 1920s and 1940s and you'd be met by the crisp hiss of carbonation, the ringing of glass, and a whole symphony of everyday concoctions. Behind the gleaming marble counter, a smooth-haired, smiling teenager stood ready to lend an ear, lift your spirits, and pour you a little something to make the day easier. Nobody called it therapy, but everyone understood it made life feel just a little more bearable. It's hard to overstate how important the soda jerk was. In an era before counsellors were common and before self-help gurus were even a concept, these young adults were the closest many folks had to a sounding board with a soda dispenser when they were struggling. Try a lemon lime, the soda jerk might suggest, flipping the top off a 7-Up bottle, pouring it over chipped ice, and sending you back out into the world with a sense of calm. Maybe it was the sweet taste, maybe the bubbles, or maybe, just maybe, that trace of lithium carbonate making things seem a whole lot brighter. The soda jerk's supplies were a hidden chest of surprising and delightful cures. Syrups in every colour and flavour lined the shelves, each one promising a specific kind of soothing. Root beer for the heat, cherry phosphate for a broken heart, ginger ale for an upset stomach, and the always popular lithiated lemon lime for anything that troubled your mind. A skilled soda jerk didn't just know the recipes. He could read a customer, he could spot an exhausted parent, a lovesick adolescent, or an overwhelmed office worker from 10 feet away and have the perfect drink ready the moment they reached the counter. But the true power wasn't just in the liquids, it was in the performance. A person would settle onto a stool, drop a nickel on the counter, and the soda jerk would swiftly get to work, scooping ice, mixing syrup, pulling levers, and finishing every glass with a theatrical flourish. It was part show, part mental break. The atmosphere was classic Americana. The fizz of bottles, the sound of laughing, shared secrets, the scrape of feet on the floor, and the steady ring of the cash register. For many small communities, this was the real hub of Main Street in the 1930s. Mental troubles were something to be kept quiet, ideally whispered behind closed doors. But a bubbly lemon lime drink, the entirely normal 7-Up, became a form of healing in a bottle. No couches, no insurance fees, just carbonation. People didn't admit they were stressed. They said they needed a soft drink, and they didn't mean whiskey. This was the era of looking after yourself, long before self-care became a trend and everyone was too relaxed to ask why. The world was different then. People didn't talk about their emotional state. They didn't write down their feelings or schedule visits with a professional. They either struggled through or pretended to, but the pressures of life were heavy. The Great Depression, job anxiety, family issues, and the need to maintain appearances at all costs. The word stress wasn't used daily, but everyone experienced it. What they did have was a soda fountain on every corner, a nickel to spare, and a collective belief that a bright, fizzy lemon lime could set the world right again. The whole ritual was a kind of group comfort. You'd escape the dreary grind of the day and step into the bright, buzzing energy of the pharmacy. Perhaps you'd sit, watch the soda jerk pull a cold 7-Up from the cooler and listen to the fizz reverberate off the tile and marble for a minute. As you drank, time seemed to slow down. The bubbling sound muted the noise of unpaid bills and silent worries. There was no need for discussion or deep thought. You just felt better. The soda handled the hard work, sometimes literally, considering the gentle mood stabilizer blended into the original recipe. The mental benefit of the drink also worked its silent wonder at home. When the kids were acting up, or Mum was at her breaking point, or Dad had a rough day at the plant, the answer was often the same. Let's have a 7-Up. Families would sit around the kitchen table, pour the soda over ice, and the conversation, if there was any, grew calmer. Arguments lessened, complaints disappeared, and even the family pet seemed more tranquil. Was it the sugar, the habit, the tiny bit of lithium carbonate? No one felt the need to ask. You felt relieved, and that was enough. The advertisements of the day quietly acknowledged this new form of emotional management. 7-Up was marketed as the drink for happy dispositions and nervous energy. Ads told people to refresh your mood and enjoy a moment of peace. All without any hint of shame or awkwardness. It was the only self-help you could buy at the neighbourhood store. No questions, no appointments needed. Of course, this pop psychology was purely accidental. The soft drink industry wasn't trying to run a nationwide mental health program. They were simply focused on profit and what was popular. But sometimes an unexpected discovery can change a country's mood. In those difficult years when few could afford a real vacation or time off, a cold soda was a temporary escape. It gave everyone permission to pause, to rest, to breathe, to feel okay for a while. Jump ahead to the 1950s, modern kitchens, light-coloured fridges, and smiling housewives offering guests 7-Up with a knowing smile that said, "Everything is under control." The lithium was gone, but the reputation remained. The company embraced the image of peaceful domestic perfection. It was the soda that seemed to say, "You might be feeling empty inside, but your drink is full of life." It became the atomic family's emotional aid beverage. This was the time of the perfect nuclear family. Mom, Dad, 2 kids, and a dog, all living in tidy houses on streets with names like Oak Lane and Happy Valley Road. The world outside was filled with Cold War anxiety and rapidly growing suburbs. But inside the house, life was a perfectly coloured show of happiness. And at the heart of it all was the kitchen, that tiled safe haven where 7-Up was as common as Tupperware and Jell-O salad. The move to aluminum cans marked a change in how Americans enjoyed their soft drinks. The heavy glass bottles of the past were replaced by shiny light cans, an invention that was as much about ease as it was about the new futuristic style. 7-Up's green cans, bright and inviting, were stocked in every refrigerator and picnic basket. With a quick twist and a satisfying pop, anyone in the family could get instant refreshment. No visit to the soda fountain was necessary, but there was more than just convenience in that can. The 1950s homemaker wasn't just serving a drink, she was serving a sense of calm. The happy fizz of 7-Up was the sound of a peaceful home, a simple tool for calming down dinner parties, children's fits, and afternoons that felt overly long. The ads didn't mention lithium anymore, thanks to the FDA, but they promised a different kind of magic. Energy, clarity, and the subtle guarantee that if you kept the bubbles flowing, life might remain as neat as your kitchen. The advertising heavily played up this fantasy. Housewives were shown effortlessly opening a 7-Up, the children tidy and quiet, Dad looking relaxed in his chair, the curtains gently swaying in the summer air. "You like it, it likes you," the slogan happily declared, as if to suggest, yes, the world may be scary, but this soda will keep your dinner table peaceful. The underlying message was simple. You don't need a therapist. You need a cold can and a smile. It's important to remember that in a decade obsessed with appearances, a little calm in a can was a welcome illusion. Beneath the light-coloured surfaces and cheerful slogans, there was a lot of worry. School drills for atomic attacks, neighbours keeping score, and endless pressure to maintain the standard of living. The 7-Up in the refrigerator was a secret weapon. If the baby was crying or Aunt Millie was criticising your casserole, just pour everyone a glass, add some maraschino cherries and let the bubbles work their charm. At least for a few moments. Everything truly felt fine. Even the simple act of sharing a soda was about more than just satisfying thirst. It was about making a shared moment, a break in the daily routine to clink glasses, share a joke, or just sit quietly together. The aluminum age taught America that repetition and ritual could be their own kind of comfort, and that sometimes feeling refreshed was just as necessary as being happy. When the Food and Drug Administration finally took action, America collectively sighed and then immediately got a little more irritable. Scientists noted that lithium might not be suitable in a children's beverage, which was technically true. Though extremely unpopular, the company quietly changed the formula, and just like that, the nation's overall sense of calm disappeared. It turns out that regulation, while necessary, has terrible timing. For years, the chaotic world of American soft drinks was like a chemical fairground. Every soda fountain was a science experiment, and every soda jerk was a casual scientist. The rules were loose, the flavour options endless, and the health claims were honestly ridiculous. If it tasted good and made you feel better, no one looked too closely at what was in it. You could walk into a pharmacy and order a fizzy mixture that contained caffeine, cocaine, lithium, or who knows what else, and no one batted an eye. It was all part of the fun. But progress doesn't stop, and the 1940s brought an age of scientific investigation. The FDA, once a small and mostly overlooked government office, suddenly gained power and a serious interest in what the public was drinking. Reports started to appear, quietly mentioning the risks of long-term lithium use, particularly for children and anyone with a less than perfectly healthy kidney. The medical journals that had once praised lithiated sodas now looked disapproving. Perhaps this isn't the best plan, they suggested, as America reluctantly put down its glass and started reading the labels for 7-Up and its rivals. The change happened fast. Gone were the proud, lithiated labels, replaced by a new recipe that looked and tasted almost the same but lacked the famous mood-altering kick. The advertising quickly changed direction. Out went the doctors and the health promises. In came sunshine, summer outings, and the pledge of pure refreshment. It was a perfect marketing pivot. Don't mention what's missing. Just make everything look brighter. But America noticed the difference, even if they couldn't exactly say what it was. The shared tranquility that once flowed through soda fountains and dinner tables faded. Tempers were a little shorter, and days felt a little more difficult. Suddenly, children were full of nervous energy again, and parents were reaching for coffee instead of lemon lime for a quick boost. The soda still tasted fine, but the peaceful after-effect was gone. For a short, sparkling period, the beverage industry complained. They blamed the scientists and regulators for spoiling everyone's fun. Why, they wondered, did the authorities have to take away the magic when everything was going so well? Didn't the FDA understand that the country was at its happiest when every soda was a little chemical experiment? Of course, the reason was obvious. The dangers finally outweighed the benefits. The nation's accidental human trial had ended, and regulation, however annoying, was here to stay. In hindsight, it was probably the right decision. But it's hard not to feel a bit wistful for a time when feeling good came with bubbles, and science and charm were equally important ingredients in the American dream. And now, almost 100 years later, we're right back where we started, only with better branding. Modern wellness companies are openly selling calming drinks infused with adaptogens, magnesium and good energy. Swap the doctor's white coats for social media stars, the lithium for lavender, and you've essentially remade the 1930s. The containers are smoother, the buzzwords more morally correct, but the goal is the same. Peace in a can, preferably with no sugar. Walk down the drink aisle of any trendy grocery store today and you'll see rows of soft-coloured cans promising a new era of relaxation. CBD seltzers promise to settle your mind. Magnesium waters vow to help you unwind without the slump. Mushroom concoctions claim to improve focus and calm, and every can is photographed in the hand of a wellness expert with millions of followers and a perfectly styled kitchen background. It's a scene that would make any soda jerk from the 1930s look twice, but only for a moment before realising the core idea hasn't changed. Back then, the pharmacist was the expert, the soda jerk, the local confidant. Now it's the influencer, the yoga instructor, the diet coach, or the startup founder, all promising that this latest drink will finally make life a little less overwhelming. The science is still there, but it's got a fresh coat of marketing polish. Instead of clinical studies, we have personal stories. Instead of medical claims, we have ancient wisdom and modern calmness. It's all a little bit suspicious, but also incredibly attractive. The current market for calming drinks is a gold rush, with companies competing to bottle comfort for people who are always stressed. People are busier than ever, the world is still loud and unpredictable, and the desire for instant, simple calm is always strong. The key difference is that now every ingredient is carefully examined, FDA approved, or at least not illegal, and listed in a refined typeface. But the emotional pull remains the same. Take a drink and let the day's worries fade into a soft, fizzy sound. You can almost hear the echoes. A century ago, stressed Americans reached for a lemon-lime soda, unaware that it contained just enough lithium to make the neighbour's loud dog seem less irritating. Today, you reach for a can of calm seltzer, and while the ingredients are different, the intention is exactly the same. Drink your way to emotional stability. Let a beverage do the work your own mind can't manage. In both situations, you're buying hope, one bubbly sip at a time. There's even a new tradition that mirrors the old one. Friends meet for non-alcoholic happy hour, sipping CBD drinks instead of cocktails. Offices install kombucha and adaptogen bars. People discuss the benefits of L-theanine and ashwagandha, the way their grandparents once debated ginger versus lemon syrup. Even the word mocktail has gone from a joke to a complete trend built on the idea that you can relax, celebrate, and take the tension off without alcohol or prescription medication. Just a can and a hope for the best. Of course, doubt is just as popular as the drinks themselves. Social media is full of wellness critics checking labels and reminding everyone that sometimes the only truly effective ingredient is the placebo effect. But even the doubters line up to try the next new thing, because hope never goes out of style. We want to believe that comfort comes in a can, that happiness is just a flavour away, and that the right amount of bubbles might make everything easier, even if only briefly. So the next time you grab a chill seltzer and wonder why it feels so familiar, remember this: America has always loved its liquid peace. We began with lithium, moved through sugar, and now we're sipping CBD and adaptogens. A complete circle, just pure fizzy escapism. Inner peace might be harder to find than it was in a 1930s pharmacy, but the dream continues. Dressed up for the Instagram generation, ready to offer a moment of quiet in a world that never stops bubbling. So tonight, as you sink deeper into your pillow, or whatever version of comfort capitalism hasn't managed to market to you yet, take a slow breath. Because once upon a time, calm was sold in a glass bottle. A bottle that hissed when you opened it, sparkled under the pharmacy lights, and promised to make your worries float away, like carbonation. And for a few short decades, it actually did. In the early 20th century, no one questioned why the soda made them feel so happy. They didn't call it microdosing, they just called it refreshing. And while the Great Depression raged on, at least your drink could tell your brain, "It's fine, friend, everything's fine." Perhaps history's funniest twist is that America didn't find mental wellness through meditation or therapy. It found it through a lemon-lime drink secretly mixed with a psychiatric medicine. So as you lie there wrapped in blankets that actually got cleaned this decade, maybe whisper a quiet thank you to your ancestors, the accidental pioneers of mental well-being. Through carbonation, they paved the way so your modern flavoured sparkling water could exist. Because history, despite all its ridiculous moments, has always been driven by the same human desire. To feel okay, to find a little bit of sparkle in the middle of a struggle. And even if we've swapped lithium for electrolytes and miracle tonics for marketing slogans, the search for that gentle, fizzy kind of peace never truly stopped. So close your eyes, listen to the soft hum of your fan, your modern-day soda fountain. Let the white noise bubble and hiss. The world outside is loud and chaotic, but for now, you can simply rest. You don't need a special drink to calm your nerves. Just a little quiet, a little perspective, and the knowledge that somewhere in history, people were trying their best, even if their best involved inventing an antidepressant soda. Sleep well, friend. Tomorrow everything will still be complicated, but for now, everything is fine.